Chapter 116. At this time, Huowu was waiting for Long Qingying to be smashed by the iron ball she made. His face was full of pity. He couldn't even sleep with such a strange woman. What a pity. However, right at this moment, a transparent figure flashed past Long Qingying's side. Just as the iron ball was about to hit her, he pulled her to the side. Then the two of them disappeared. Bang! With a loud sound, the heavy iron ball smashed into the ground. The ground shook, and the iron ball directly smashed a hole in the ground. Half of the iron ball had sunk in. A few cracks appeared on the cement floor of the crater. There was no blood splattering everywhere, and there was no Long Qingying's flattened body. There wasn't even a drop of blood around. Huowu stared at the iron ball curiously. After a long time there was no trace of blood. Only then did he lift his foot and walk over. Why wasn't there blood splattering? Even if it didn't splatter, it should have rolled to the ground. And the iron ball was very big, it couldn't have directly smashed a person into pieces, right? Even if the head and torso were smashed into the ground, what about the legs? Du Yuanqing was just like Huowu, looking at the iron ball that had half sunk into the ground with a dumbfounded expression. The question mark in his mind was the same as Huowu's, but he quickly reacted. He didn't want to care about Long Qingying anymore. He had to save himself first. If he could escape, it was better than everyone dying in his hands. Du Yuanqing, who wanted to fight to the death just now, was scared now. After a few rounds of attacks, he was completely suppressed by Huowu. They had no chance at all. Now that Huowu's attention was on Long Qingying, he could escape immediately. So he hesitated for a moment, then decisively turned around and escaped. Huowu, who originally wanted to check on Long Qingying, was immediately attracted by Du Yuanqing's actions. When he came back to his senses and saw Du Yuanqing's fleeing figure, he sneered. Want to run? Do you think you can run? Don't even think about running. As he spoke, the fire dragons above Huowu's head immediately split into two. One flew towards Du Yuanqing, and the other chased Kai Hongqing and the others who had already run far away. On the other side, the armed soldiers saw where Huowu's fire dragons were flying. Over there. Go after them. At this time, Yang Cheng was quietly moving in the direction of Du Yuanqing. Huowu stood in place and turned around, looking in the direction that Du Yuanqing had fled. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and waved it at the fire dragon in the air. The fire dragon shrank and turned into a fireball. Then it swelled up again, and the center became empty. Like a huge cover, it covered Du Yuanqing's position. Du Yuanqing had only run a few steps. He didn't even have the time to run far. It was immediately enveloped by Huowu's flame barrier. A wave of scorching heat enveloped him, and Du Yuanqing immediately felt as if his hair and eyebrows were on fire. He felt as if he had been thrown into a giant oven. Then, before he could think of anything else, he saw the fire barrier suddenly shrink. Looking at the rapidly shrinking flame barrier, Du Yuanqing finally had an idea. It's over. This time he was going to be burnt into charcoal. However, Huowu's plan soon came true. In the next instant, the shrunken fire shield wrapped around his body. Ah! Du Yuanqing immediately let out a blood-curdling scream. Then he rolled on the ground. As he screamed, he rolled on the ground. Crackle! A series of light explosions sounded. Then lightning flashed on his body from the red flames, as if he was trying to block the flames on his body. However, his lightning had no effect on the flames. Thus, the fire quickly burned his entire body. Ah, Huowu! Sooner or later, one day, you will end up like us. Ah! Du Yuanqing cursed Huowu in pain while rolling on the ground, thinking that he was dead for sure. There was no way out. Then at this moment, he suddenly felt someone grabbing his shoulder that was burning painfully. Then before he could react to what was going on, plop, a sound. In the next second, Du Yuanqing felt his body suddenly fall into the water. His entire face was submerged in water, and his mouth, nose, and ears felt as if they were surrounded by water. His breathing was also blocked. Moreover, it was very deep water because he was sinking. Just as he was confused about what was going on, he immediately woke up with a pleasant surprise. His first thought was that there was water. As long as there was water, there was hope. Thus, he immediately focused and realized that the flames on his body were gone. His entire body was submerged in the water, and the water was above his head. His body was still sinking. He immediately reacted. He did not care about the burn wounds on his body or the burning pain from his clothes scraping against his body. He used both his hands and feet to swim upwards. When he popped his head out of the water and saw his surroundings clearly, he exclaimed in surprise, Why are you here? Huowu, who was outside, was also dumbfounded. He stared blankly at the place where Du Yuanxing disappeared. Then he looked back at the big metal ball that was originally smashed towards Long Qingying. There was nothing around the metal ball. There were no exposed limbs and no blood splattered. Before he could figure out what was going on with that Long Qingying, this Du Yuanxing disappeared right in front of his eyes. Disappeared. Disappear. Why the fuck would a person just disappear into thin air? Huowu cursed in his heart, and directly rushed to the place where Du Yuanxing disappeared. Not to mention that Du Yuanxing had disappeared. Huowu couldn't even feel the flames on his body. What was going on? Why was it like this? While Huowu was walking around in circles, puzzled by what was happening outside, the two that were pulled into the space by Lin Xiao were now standing on the shore of the lake with blank faces. They stared at the space around them dumbfoundedly. The white misty sky, there was nothing on it. There was no sun, no sky, no clouds. Just now it was still bright and sunny in broad daylight. Other than the green lake in front of them, there was only a grassland. There was a lot of furniture scattered all over the grassland, as well as daily necessities and other things used by humans. Then he looked at the zombie that stole his glasses. Du Yuanxing felt that his brain wasn't enough right now. No, it wasn't that it wasn't enough, it was directly crashed. What was this situation? Where was this place? How did he get here? How did this zombie save them again? What was this place? How could he get here in the blink of an eye? What was this lake? What was this furniture? Wasn't there a child over there? All kinds of questions appeared in his mind, directly squeezing his brain into a mess. Until he saw Junjun and a little boy at the entrance of the small space not far away. Only then did he react. This place is? He looked at Long Qingying and asked. Chapter 117. Long Qingying looked at him coldly, then looked at Lin Xiao and didn't say anything. She directly stuffed a piece of paper in her hand into his chest. It wasn't that she didn't want to answer, but she really didn't know how to come back. Just now, when she was in despair and thought that she was going to be smashed to death by the big metal ball, suddenly she felt her arm being pulled by someone, and in a flash she was at this lake. Before she could react, she saw the zombie next to her take out a book and quickly write a few words. He directly stuffed it into her hand, and before she could react, the zombie disappeared right in front of her eyes. She was stunned for a long time, and then came back to her senses. Just when she realized that she was still alive, and before she could open the ball of paper in her hand, she heard a piu-piu, and looked up. She saw that the zombie next to her appeared again, and seemed to have thrown something very big into the lake. The sound of the water was very loud, and the movement on the surface was also very big. Then she saw a person flopping in the water, and took a closer look. Wasn't it Du Yuanxing who was with her just now? Looking at Du Yuanxing in the water, who didn't know what had happened, as well as his expression of having survived a disaster, she knew that this guy must have encountered the same situation as her, and was then inexplicably brought in by this zombie. Lin Xiao stood at the side and closed her eyes to look at the situation outside, and realized that it was already a bit too late to save the others. Originally she wanted to ask Cho Lily to help save them, but that guy had a huge grudge against humans. Although she didn't want to hurt humans, but she wanted her to save them. She refused and disappeared in a flash. There was no other way, she couldn't force him, right? Moreover, she didn't have that ability. So Lin Xiao could only save the two who were closer by herself. As for the others, they were either shot dead by Huowu's subordinates, or burned by Huowu's other fire dragon. She looked at the two confused faces in front of her, and didn't know what was going on. Du Yuanxing didn't know what to do, and opened the piece of paper Long Qingying gave him. On it was written, "Stay here and don't move." Stay here and don't move? Did it mean that he should stay here and not move? Du Yuanxing, who could not understand what was going on, stood there with the paper in his hand. He looked at Long Qingying blankly, then at Lin Xiao. Of course, he didn't know that Lin Xiao wrote it for Long Qingying, but Long Qingying hadn't read it yet. When she saw him come in and was questioned by him, she subconsciously gave it to him. She didn't know what was going on either. Lin Xiao looked at them, took out a pen and wrote, "I am powerless to help your other companions." He handed the paper ball to Long Qingying. Long Qingying opened it and her eyes dimmed. He then passed it to Du Yuanxing. Du Yuanxing took a look and his expression darkened. The surrounding atmosphere was like the fallen leaves in the autumn wind, desolate and sorrowful. He was very sad, but he quickly accepted it. This was not the first time he had lost a companion, and of course it would not be the last. Going out after the apocalypse was already very dangerous, and everyone was putting their lives on the line. He accidentally dropped it. Therefore, they did not feel uncomfortable because they had seen this kind of situation many times. But, I will take revenge. If Huo Wu doesn't die, I will definitely come back to take his life. Thinking that he was killed by Huo Wu this time, his expression changed, and his face became somewhat ferocious. His face was full of hatred and murderous intent, and he said while gritting his teeth, "And me?" Long Qingying's cold voice sounded next to him, "I will remember this. In the future, as long as I see people from the Earth Dragon base, I will not let them go." Lin Xiao had followed these two people for so long. She had already learned a lot from their conversation, as well as the conversation between Huo Wu and Yang Cheng. Now, there was basically no need to ask these two people in front of her about the situation. She wrote, "Is it the people from the Earth Dragon base who caused Lin Feng to escape with his family to Shanghai?" She handed the paper to Long Qingying. After Long Qingying took it, her expression changed. She suddenly looked up at Lin Xiao and asked in a low voice, "How did you know?" Du Yuanxing saw that her expression was strange, and he also looked over. Then his expression became serious, just like Long Qingying's. They didn't say anything before, but how did this zombie know that they were from the Earth Dragon base so quickly? And she also knew that Lin Feng and his family escaped to the direction of Shanghai? They didn't say any of this, so how did this zombie know? Could it be that he made the same deal with Huo Wu as they did before? Lin Xiao shrugged and wrote, "I already know a lot of things. I also know that this Huo Wu was brought here by your traitor Yang Cheng." When Long Qingying saw this, she directly slapped the paper on Du Yuanxing's chest. "You should have killed him before coming out." Du Yuanxing looked at the words on the paper and asked Lin Xiao, "Is it really him?" Lin Xiao nodded and raised her hand to push the glasses on her face. Du Yuanxing's eyes flashed a trace of murderous intent. He said, "I know, he was originally a wind element paranormal. Before, he wanted to take the level 4 zombie course here, so I didn't let him follow. I didn't expect that he would collude with those scum from the Earth Dragon base to deal with us. Next time I see him, let me do it." Long Qingying's hand that was holding the knife tightened, and her face was full of murderous intent. Du Yuanxing looked at her and wanted to ask her to do it himself. But this time it was Yang Cheng who brought Huo Wu here, and their target was Long Qingying. That was why they almost all died this time. "All right, I'll let you have him. Then Huo Wu, you don't have to fight with me, right?" Du Yuanxing said. Hearing him mention Huo Wu, Long Qingying remembered that there was someone she wanted to kill even more. She immediately changed her mind and said, "No, I'll leave Yang Cheng to you. I'll kill Huo Wu, you can't beat him anyway." Du Yuanxing, who was suddenly despised for being weak, was speechless. "All right, where is this? Is that a human child over there? Am I seeing things? Who let the child out of the base?" At this time he suddenly looked around and asked Lin Xiao. Then he pointed at the little boy not far away, and his face was full of anger. There were very few children in the apocalypse. There were fewer women and even fewer children. Therefore, children were protected first and they could never be taken out of the base. Therefore, just like Tiny Tot before, she was taken out of the base by Lu Qianyu and thrown outside. Everyone in the base wanted to kill her. Only then did Long Qingying notice Junjun and the little boy on the other side. She looked at them a few times, and then said doubtfully, "How do you know that's not two zombies?" Saying that, she turned to look at Lin Xiao, because she saw Junjun's face. His eyes were black and his eyes were rolled back. That was the face of a zombie. So, could a child who was held by a zombie still be human? Chapter 118. But Du Yuanxing said, I saw it, the child's face. It's a human. Then he looked at Lin Xiao strangely, and then looked at the zombie holding the child. There was already a strange zombie here that could write, so the one over there definitely wasn't a normal zombie, right? Otherwise, why would the zombie that stole his glasses trust the female zombie with the child? Since this male zombie would save them, it meant that he wouldn't let the child be hurt by zombies. Could it be? This was a family of 3? Were those his wife and son over there? Du Yuanxing looked at Lin Xiao. He had always thought that Lin Xiao was male. So when he saw Junjun and the little boy, he didn't get it. Then he thought about their relationship. Because he was close, he could see Du Yuanxing's eyes and expression. Lin Xiao could faintly sense his thoughts. It was fine if she was treated as a man. She was treated as Junjun's husband, and the father of the little boy who cried when he saw her. This was something she could not accept. Hey, do you still have time to guess their relationship? Shouldn't you worry about your own situation? She couldn't help but roll her eyes. At this time Long Qingying still didn't understand and asked Lin Xiao, what is this place? They are. Then she pointed to Junjun's side. Lin Xiao wasn't afraid of exposing her space, so she wrote on the paper, this is my space, you can think of me as a space ability zombie. That child is a living person, I saved him on the way here. That zombie might be the child's mother, she won't hurt the child. Although she lost her memory, she still has her humanity. After Long Qingying saw her words, she stared at Junjun with a strange expression. Then, he looked at Du Yuanxing with an inexplicable expression. Both of their eyes were filled with disbelief. Du Yuanxing stared at the little boy and asked, that female zombie, won't she bite the child? In people's impression, as long as zombies smelled humans, they would rush up and take a few bites. The two of them didn't understand why would that female zombie hold the child and not eat him. Lin Xiao wrote, she only lost her memory, but she didn't lose her humanity. Moreover, this child might be her child, she has an instinct not to hurt him. Furthermore, this child could be her child. She had an instinct not to hurt him. After Du Yuanxing read what Lin Xiao had written, he turned to look at her. He asked, will it bite us? Long Qingying also looked at Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao bared his teeth at the two of them, revealing his 2 sharp canine teeth. Du Yuanxing and Long Qingying, what's the meaning of this? Lin Xiao wrote, if I were to bite her, would she still stand there obediently? Du Yuanxing looked at the words and asked hesitantly, you really don't know? Wasn't she a zombie? If the child was her son, there would be a reason for her not to bite him. Then why doesn't it bite us? Are we not delicious? Lin Xiao stuck out her nose and sniffed at him before writing, your flesh is indeed not as tasty as a woman's. But isn't the main point you're concerned about running away? Shouldn't you worry about what you're going to do next? Why do you keep staring at zombies? I'm also a zombie, do you want me to bite you? Du Yuanxing and his companion received the paper. After reading the contents, they subconsciously took 2 steps back. That's right, you're a spatial zombie. Can zombies have spatial abilities? Du Yuanxing suddenly stared at Lin Xiao and said, there were many human psychics, because it was easier to activate a human's ability than a zombie's. Although the number of zombies right now is tens or even hundreds of times that of humans. However, when many zombies advance from level 3 to level 4, there is only a 10% chance that they can activate their ability and successfully advance to level 4. Therefore, there were very few high-level zombies. There were very few spatial ability users among humans, and even fewer among zombies. At this time, Long Qingying couldn't stand Du Yuanxing's personality anymore. She couldn't help but say, he asked you what you're going to do next? Why do you care about someone else's spatial ability? Lin Xiao deeply felt the same way and nodded. You were almost killed by someone else and your companions were all dead. Only you and a partner of the same strength survived. What should you do next? Go back to the base or continue to stay outside? Or leave the south and find a way to survive in another base? Long Qingying spoke first. I can't go back to the base here. Huo Wu and Long Yubai won't let me go. I'm going to leave for Shanghai. I'll also look for Lin Feng and the others to see if I can meet them. By the way, did you already know about our leader? Were you testing us on purpose? As she said that, an idea flashed in her mind. She stared at Lin Xiao and asked, did this zombie really have something to do with Lin Feng and the others? Perhaps it had already heard about Lin Feng and the others and came over to verify the situation. Maybe it had met them just now, so it saved them. At the same time, it would be normal for Lin Xiao to know that Lin Feng brought his family to Shanghai. If that was the case, it was normal for Lin Xiao to know that Lin Feng had taken his family to City B. She didn't expect the other party to find an excuse for her. Then she might as well borrow it. Hearing her words, Du Yuanxing also put away his curiosity about Junjun and the little boy. He looked at Lin Xiao and thought about Long Qingying's words at the same time. If the zombie in front of them was really as she said, it had already heard about Lin Feng and the others. Then was it a friend or foe? Although it said it was a friend at the beginning, who knew if it was true or not? They didn't know it and had no basis to judge it. But judging from how it had saved them several times, it didn't seem like it was an enemy. But he didn't see it do anything to harm Huo Wu and the others. Then he had to suspect the zombie's purpose now. What's your purpose in asking about them? He asked. Seeing that the two of them were finally getting down to business, Lin Xiao wrote on the paper, I'll go find them now. Then help them. That's why I want to find out about their current situation. After handing over the paper, Long Qingying looked at it. Then she looked at Du Yuanxing. She turned to Lin Xiao and asked, Then find them? Are you going to help them? Lin Xiao nodded. Long Qingying looked at her calmly and continued, If you had killed Huo Wu and the people he brought with him just now, maybe we would believe you. Lin Xiao shrugged and wrote, I don't kill people casually. Even if I want to, I have to wait until it's necessary. And I can't beat Huo Wu, he's a level 6 psychic. She could kill people, but it depended on the situation. And the first thing she needed to do now was to find Lin Feng and the others. If she wanted to kill them, she could come back and kill them. Chapter 119. Long Qingying said, Then are you going to go to City B to find Lin Feng? Lin Xiao nodded to her. Are you going to find the commander? Du Yuanxing asked. Lin Xiao nodded again and wrote, I've already found the information I wanted. So I won't stay here. Long Qingying said, Since you want to go find them, can I go with you? She looked at Junjun and the little boy behind her. After knowing that the child was a human, she didn't feel safe leaving the child in the hands of these two zombies. She couldn't go back to the base now and it wasn't safe outside. So she might as well go find Lin Feng and the others. She wanted to see if this zombie was telling the truth. If it really was as it said it was going to help Lin Feng and the others, she would believe it for now. Du Yuanxing looked at Long Qingying in surprise. He knew that Long Qingying was going to find Lin Feng and the others, but he didn't think that she wanted to go with these zombies. This was too dangerous. They didn't know where these zombies came from. What was their background? You want to go with him? It's too dangerous. He couldn't help but blurt out. They couldn't believe what this zombie said at first. Maybe it had some unknown intentions towards Lin Feng and the others. If Long Qingying followed them, what if she got in their way? Wouldn't they be killed? Lin Xiao looked at the two of them calmly and didn't say anything. Long Qingying understood what Du Yuanxing meant and also knew what danger he was talking about. She looked at Lin Xiao, but she wanted to find out the zombie's purpose at the same time. And it would indeed be dangerous. But now, even if she ran so far away to chase after Lin Feng and the others, it would still be dangerous. If she encountered a level 4 zombie or a level 5 zombie alone, she would not be able to survive. In that case, she would also be dead. In that case, it was better to follow this strange zombie. At least on the surface, this zombie was very friendly. I believe he won't hurt me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have saved us so many times. She looked at Lin Xiao and said to Du Yuanxing. But Du Yuanxing still wanted to say something. However, when he saw the determination in Long Qingying's eyes, he shut his mouth. Long Qingying looked at him and suddenly said, Since you're so worried about me, why don't you go to City B with me? In any case, your entire team has been killed. With your strength alone, you won't be able to defeat them. Even if you return to the current base, forget about revenge. There might be trouble. Du Yuanxing fell silent. Long Qingying was telling the truth. His current situation was no different from Long Qingying's. Originally, he didn't have any direct relationship with Lin Feng and the rest. Now, because it was with Long Qingying, it disappeared from Huo Wu's hands again. Then Huo Wu would definitely think that he was in cahoots with Long Qingying. At his current level, perhaps he could go with Long Qingying to find Lin Feng and the others. Later, Lin Feng would definitely bring them back to take revenge on the Earth Dragon base. Moreover, he and Long Qingying both believed that Lin Feng and his siblings would not be killed by Yang Jianhua so easily. At this time, Lin Xiao used a piece of paper to write. The leader you are talking about, is it Lin Feng's eldest sister Lin Xiao? She had been thinking about this for a long time, but she had always been skeptical. But after a long time, all the information she collected revealed this matter. Lin Xiao was very conflicted. Because one day, you suddenly went to another strange world and found that there was another you in this world. And your family, they were all with the other you. What was the meaning of her current appearance? She woke up in another body, the body was not her. The appearance was also not her. Everything around him didn't belong to him. Regarding the existence of the other her, she had to figure out what was going on. But of course, when she found out that there was another her, she was told that she was dead. So what was the situation now? Lin Xiao was a little confused. She could only figure out the problems one by one. Long Qingying took the paper and looked at it carefully. She looked up and nodded at Lin Xiao. She said with a look of admiration, "That's right. The real name of the leader of the Death Flame is Lin Xiao. Her special ability is the Black Poisonous Flame. It's very powerful. So we gave her the name of the Death Flame. Not only is she very powerful, her brothers and sisters are not weak either. If it wasn't for that shameless Long Yubai colluding with the deputy leader of the Death Flame and instigating him to betray the leader of the Death Flame would not have died in the hands of those level 7 experts." When talking about the death of the leader of the Death Flame, Long Qingying's face and eyes were full of hatred. She was angry at Long Yubai's ambition and hated Yang Jianhua's betrayal. When Lin Xiao heard Long Qingying's words, she was shocked. She couldn't believe it was true. It was one thing to have her own suspicions, but it was another thing to have it confirmed by others. She didn't expect that person to really be her other self. If it was just Lin Xiao, it could be said that they had the same name. But if Lin Feng, Lin Wenwen and the others were added, then it wouldn't be the same name. And who was Yang Jianhua? Although she was still a little shocked, a trace of doubt flashed through her mind. After thinking for a while, she wrote on the paper. Lin Xiao's brother and sister. Are they called Lin Wenwen and Lin Hao? When Long Qingying saw what she wrote, she looked at her strangely. Yes. Don't tell me you don't even know this? Don't you know leader Lin Feng? How can you not know his brother and sister's names? Lin Xiao wrote. I know, I just want to confirm. To confirm that other self really exists. Lin Xiao didn't know what to say. Long Qingying felt that these zombies were getting weirder and weirder. She looked at Lin Xiao silently. At this time, Du Yuanqing thought about Long Qingying's words and suddenly nodded. He agreed and said, all right, I'll go with you to find the leader. There's no place for us to stay here anyway. Rather than staying here, it's better to follow the leader. As he said that, he wanted to look at the direction of the Netherworld King's base behind him. In the end, when he looked up, he only saw a white fog. Du Yuanqing. He had forgotten that he was in some zombie space. When Long Qingying saw that he actually agreed to her request, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Having someone go with her was better than walking with a few unfamiliar zombies. Lin Xiao saw that these two people actually took the initiative to follow her. She hadn't even said anything and they had already agreed. Things were going a lot smoother than she had imagined. Originally, she was still thinking about how to coax this cold and handsome woman to join her team. But now she had to clarify one thing. She took the paper and wrote, You said that Darkfire was killed by the Earth Dragon base and the traitor Yang Jianhua. This Yang Jianhua, who is he? Chapter 120. If that Lin Xiao was really him, then she should also know this person called Yang Jianhua. Otherwise, with her personality, she wouldn't let a person who she didn't know her limits be her right-hand man. But she didn't know a person called Yang Jianhua. Then where did this person come from? Long Qingying looked back and said, Yang Jianhua met the leader after the apocalypse. I heard that he saved the leader's life when she was about to die. So the leader and the leader regarded him as a benefactor. But I heard that when the leader was trapped in the zombie city, she was framed by Yang Jianhua. She just didn't know. Hearing this news, Lin Xiao's expression only slightly sank. It seemed that there were still a lot of things that needed to be clarified. But Du Yuanxing's expression changed. He stared at Long Qingying in disbelief and said, "What did you say? You said that at that time Yang Jianhua deliberately framed the leader so that he deliberately saved her? Why? At that time the leader's strength was still very low. Did he know at that time that the leader would later build a base?" Long Qingying looked at him and said, "You think too much. It's just that Yang Jianhua wanted to get Lin Wenwen. So he just wanted to find an opportunity to get close to her family. At that time the leader was in that situation, so he made a move on the leader at that time. The poor leader was very grateful to him at that time, and later kept him by her side to protect him as a younger brother, to help him improve his strength. But this scum was black-hearted, and didn't accept the gratitude of the leader's family. Instead, he kept harassing Lin Wenwen." Du Yuanxing's eyes widened, as if he had heard a ghost. Then he said angrily, "You said that he deliberately got close to the leader in order to get Lin Wenwen? This scum actually did such a thing? Does the leader's family not know about this? Otherwise, why would the leader's family protect him as a family member? How good was the leader to him? Everyone in the base knew about it. But what did this scum do? Betray the base. Kill the leader. And now he's still chasing Lin Feng. Originally, they thought that the Earth Dragon base gave him a very big condition, so that he could ignore the care of Lin Xiao's family. This was to report back to the leader's family. They thought that the leader had raised a black-hearted and ungrateful wolf. But unexpectedly, he wasn't an ingrate at all. Instead, it was a venomous snake, quietly lurking beside the leader. Thinking up to here, the rage in Du Yuanxing's heart grew greater and greater. Long Qingying sneered, "What a pity, leader. He probably didn't even know until his death. She treated him wholeheartedly, and that scum took it for granted." He even made good use of the leader's influence to raise his own status. Lin Xiao frowned as he listened to their conversation. He didn't expect his other self to encounter such a thing. He treated a poisonous snake as his savior and kept it by his side. But in the end, it was bitten to death. It sounded like he was listening to someone else's story, but for some reason when Lin Xiao heard the word savior, he felt a chill run down his spine. Something seemed to be tumbling out of his mind. But when she thought about it carefully, she couldn't think of anything. What was going on? This bastard. Does the leader know about it now? Du Yuanxing gritted his teeth and asked while suppressing his anger. Long Qingying shook her head. If Yang Jianhua didn't say it himself, Lin Feng and the others might not know. I received this news after I sent them off. I found out. At that time, she only knew where Lin Wenwen and the others were going, but there was already an ambush there. So she went to tell Lin Wenwen and the others in advance that there were a lot of ambushes and weapons there. She told them to leave by another route. Fortunately, she managed to deliver the news of the ambush in time, and saved Lin Feng and the others. Then not long after, she heard the secret conversation between Yang Jianhua and the people from the Earth Dragon base. So she heard these things. What about passing by and saving them? What about being seduced by Long Yubai? What about betrayal? None of these things. The truth was that Yang Jianhua was just a bedmate of Long Yubai. For the sake of his sweetheart, it was fine to send the entire base over. But this sweetheart of his didn't care about him at all. But on the surface, she still wanted to please Yang Jianhua. These things that Long Qingying knew, others didn't know. She had originally planned to look for Lin Feng and the others to pass this news to them. The most important thing now is to find the leader and the others first. What do you think? Long Qingying said, looking at Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao was thinking about Yang Jianhua's problem, and what was going on with his other self. He was thinking about what was going on with him now and so on. After being asked by Long Qingying, he stopped thinking and looked at her. She nodded. Indeed, the most important thing now was to find the people. She turned and walked towards the pile of furniture. Long Qingying and Lin Xiao didn't know what she was going to do. Seeing her suddenly walking in that direction, they silently watched her. Then they saw Lin Xiao find a set of clothes similar to what she was wearing. She walked over with it and threw it to Du Yuanxing. Du Yuanxing caught the clothes and only then realized that he was wet all over. But then he found something strange. Question mark. Hearing his inexplicable Long Qingying and Lin Xiao also looked at him. They saw Du Yuanxing holding the clothes, looking down at the skin on his chest. Then he looked at his hands and touched the skin on his face. Damn! Why doesn't it hurt anymore? Could it be that my skin has already been burnt to death? Don't you feel pain? Long Qingying and Lin Xiao. Although this person's words were a little strange, they also discovered his situation. Originally, Du Yuanqing was thrown into the lake by Lin Xiao after being burned by Hu Yuan's fire for a while. Du Yuanqing knew that at that time, he was already red and swollen. Because Hu Yuan's fire ability was extremely hot, it wasn't like ordinary fire that would be fine after a few strokes. But now he didn't feel anything at all. Looking at his injured skin, other than the layer of skin that had been burned to death, there was actually new skin growing underneath. It was just a little itchy to the touch. Du Yuanqing didn't understand what was going on. But Lin Xiao knew. She didn't think that her lake water would work so quickly. She just threw him into the water and soaked him for a while, and he was actually directly cured of his burns. This couldn't be more magical. Her water was almost holy water, wasn't it? It could cure all kinds of illnesses. And it didn't matter if it was a person or a zombie. For some reason, Lin Xiao suddenly felt that Du Yuanqing had gotten lucky. He was cured after soaking in the water. Did you pay? Looks like I have to treat this lake well in the future. Chapter 121. Just as Lin Xiao was about to take a look at the situation and bring the two of them away, Long Qingying suddenly noticed a pile of strange things on the other side of the pond. She walked over with a puzzled expression. Lin Xiao saw her walking and looked at the place she was staring at. Only then did he remember that the corpse of the wind zombie was still there. This is a zombie? Long Qingying quickly walked over and stood beside the zombie's corpse and asked, Isn't this the level 4 wind zombie? Du Yuanqing also walked over. Very quickly he saw the appearance of the zombie's corpse on the ground. He said in surprise, I didn't think that it had already been killed by you. He looked at the zombie's corpse on the ground regretfully, and then raised his head to look around. Very quickly he saw something strange again. What are those? Strawberries? Vegetables? And those are mutated pumpkins and potatoes over there, right? Then what's your name? No. Do you have a name? I wanted to ask, why did you bring these into your space? Aren't you a zombie? When he saw that there were some strawberries and some vegetables, as well as some pumpkins and potatoes on the other side of the meadow, his brain couldn't process it and his words became a bit messy. After being reminded by him, Long Qingying also looked over. Indeed, there were some strawberries and vegetables in the middle of the meadow. Next to it was a mountain of super large pumpkins and a pile of mutated potatoes. Lin Xiao walked over and looked at the two of them with a face full of question marks. On the book he wrote, The zombie was killed not long ago, I didn't have time to throw it away. What's grown over there is edible, it's the child's food. Long Qingying took the paper and was shocked when she saw it. She stared at Lin Xiao in disbelief and then gave the paper to Du Yuanqing. You gave him these to eat. Aren't you going to harm him? These are all mutated plants. Eating them will turn him into a zombie. Long Qingying said with a bit of anger and disbelief. Lin Xiao shook his head and wrote, Who said eating these will turn him into a zombie? I'm saying these are virus-free. Look at the child, he's been eating for so many days, isn't he still fine? After she finished writing and handed it to Long Qingying, she pointed at Junjun. How is that possible? The two of them stared at Lin Xiao in disbelief, then at the little boy. But the distance was a little far so he couldn't see clearly. Du Yuanqing thought about the little boy's face, even though he didn't feel like a zombie. However, the expression on his face could not be seen clearly. Lin Xiao turned around and clapped his hands at Junjun. He pointed at the little boy and beckoned them over. Junjun knew what Lin Xiao meant. She carried the little boy and walked over slowly. She could control the scent of the little boy's body, but these two strangers made her salivate. But now she was much more rational and her mind was very clear. Therefore, she was still able to control her desire to eat people. Seeing Junjun walking over with the little boy in her arms, Long Qingying looked at the back of the child who was lying on the female zombie's neck, and felt that the child was very dependent on the female zombie. She cautiously walked to the front of the little boy behind the female zombie, paying attention to Junjun while observing the little boy's expression. Only then did he realize that the child's face was a little pale and very thin. but his two eyes were very clear and bright, staring at her curiously and timidly. The little boy seemed not to be afraid of Lin Xiao, who had cut her hair and was wearing sunglasses. A pair of big sparkling eyes looked at this and then secretly looked at that. There was really nothing wrong with it. There was no sign of infection on the child's face. You really gave him these. Long Qingying's originally indifferent face was no longer calm. Surprised, curious, confused, etc. She looked at the little boy with all kinds of inconceivable expressions, then looked at the food, then looked at Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao very patiently nodded to her. She really wanted to go out at this time, but these two people kept noticing this and that. A lot of questions came to ask her. She couldn't help but write, "I'm going out now to see the situation. I'm ready to take you guys away. You guys stay here." After giving the paper to Long Qingying, Lin Xiao patted Junjun's shoulder. Let her go back to the small space first. After getting her signal, Junjun immediately turned around and carried the little boy away from the two humans. The two of them were left standing there with puzzled looks on their faces. In a flash, Lin Xiao also disappeared in front of the two people. Lin Xiao came out invisibly, and as soon as he came out, he found that Huo Wu wasn't alone. There were also his subordinates and Yang Cheng standing on the side. Look around carefully. Huo Wu stood on a high platform and shouted to the soldiers who were searching below with his hands behind his back. Yes, Yang Cheng stood under the platform next to him, watching the soldiers search around again. Huo Wu's two fire dragons were still flying above their heads. As long as zombies approached here, they couldn't escape the fire dragon's bite. The zombies that were bitten by the fire dragons were quickly wrapped in a ball of fire, and then quickly burned into charcoal. Why did they disappear for no reason? Is there a space ability user here? Yang Cheng stood below and looked up at Huo Wu and said, "I also suspect that there is a space ability user here. But it's impossible for him to directly kidnap them in front of me without even showing up. I didn't even see a hair. Who knows what happened?" Huo Wu's expression was very gloomy, and he said with a very suffocating tone, "Yes, the space ability user didn't show up. Just like that, he saved her from his hands. I've never heard of a space ability user who can become invisible, right? Since he entered the space here, he will definitely come out again. As long as we stay here and keep an eye on him, we will definitely wait for him to come out. At that time we won't have to worry about not being able to catch him." Yang Cheng smiled. But neither of them noticed that a transparent figure had quietly appeared. It was slowly approaching them. Lin Xiao originally planned to leave as soon as she came out, but when she saw Yang Cheng, an idea popped up in her mind, so she immediately took action. Yang Cheng didn't know that a black hand was slowly grabbing him from behind. He wanted to know if Huo Wu killed the two people, because he only knew that the two people had disappeared from his hands. He didn't know if they were half dead or half dead. However, looking at Huo Wu's furious expression, he couldn't question him too openly. If he angered Huo Wu, he wouldn't have a good ending. At this moment suddenly, a transparent hand reached into his arm. The transparent arm flashed and suddenly turned from transparent to solid. Then this hand quickly grabbed Yang Cheng's arm. In the next second, Yang Cheng disappeared from Huo Wu's leg. He disappeared directly. Huh. Suddenly noticing Yang Cheng's flickering figure, Huo Wu turned his head. In the end he saw nothing. Not even a hair of Yang Cheng's was seen. Chapter 122. Bastard. Who is it? Come out. What kind of man is sneaking around? Come out and fight me if you dare. Huo Wu was so angry that he spun around on the platform after being intercepted again and again. He shouted angrily. However, no one responded to him. Hoo hoo hoo, boom boom boom. Due to his loss of control, his fire dragon danced wildly in the sky, smashing the surrounding trees, buildings and other taller objects into pieces, leaving behind balls of unextinguished high-temperature flames. Meanwhile, in the space, Yang Cheng was suddenly pulled by someone. Before he could react, he felt his vision blur. When he came back to his senses, he found himself in another place. Before he could figure out this strange environment, a hand suddenly clasped the back of his neck tightly. He let out a muffled groan and immediately struggled to twist his body backwards. Originally, if the other party clasped the back of his neck from behind, he could have easily broken free. However, no matter how hard he struggled, he could not break free. The hand on the back of his neck didn't move at all. It was tightly gripping his neck, and the strength was getting stronger and stronger. Yang Cheng even had a feeling that the hand could completely crush his neck. This was because he felt like his neck was being clamped by a thick iron clamp. Yang Cheng. Hee. I didn't expect to see you again. Suddenly, a voice sounded from the side, but the tone was filled with malice. It made people feel that the person who spoke hated him deeply, as if he wanted to bite him. Hearing this voice, Yang Cheng was shocked and immediately turned his head to look in the direction of the voice. However, the voice sounded from behind him, and he could not even turn back now, let alone see the person behind him. However, he knew who it was from the voice. Captain, why don't you come to the front and say it? Why are you sneaking around behind me? Yang Cheng looked a little panicked, but he suppressed it. He also opened his mouth and sneered back. I don't need to because I don't want to see a despicable person like you. It's too disgusting. Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying stood behind Lin Xiao and watched as Lin Xiao easily suppressed Yang Cheng, who was slightly taller than her. Lin Xiao held Yang Cheng's neck with one hand and used his other hand to remove the gun from Yang Cheng's body. He tossed it to Du Yuanqing. He, do you think you can live a good life by relying on Hua Wu of the Earth Dragon Base and following that bastard? If you hadn't led him here, maybe you could have survived. Unfortunately, you brought about your own destruction by luring him here. If we can't kill that bastard Hua Wu, do you think we can't kill you? Du Yuanqing sneered. Seeing Lin Xiao leave in a flash, Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying thought that he was going to leave this place. He didn't expect the zombie to come back in less than a few minutes. He was carrying a person in his hand. The two of them were about to take a good look at the things in this space when they saw this person. They didn't have time to observe anything new. Lin Xiao searched Yang Cheng's body for all the guns and threw them on the ground before pushing him away. Yang Cheng was pushed forward by her and staggered a few steps. He almost fell to the ground because of his unstable footsteps. When he steadied himself, he immediately turned around and saw Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying standing behind him. Beside them was a man wearing sunglasses with a face full of scars. The sunglasses belonged to Du Yuanqing. Yang Cheng naturally recognized them. He glanced at the three of them, then quickly looked around him. When he was being held down by the neck, he had clearly seen the scene in front of him. After seeing Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying, if he didn't guess wrong, this should be the space of the space ability user. I didn't expect you to find a space ability user. And it's such a big space. Yang Cheng turned around and stared at the three of them with a look of understanding. Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying just stared at him indifferently and didn't say anything. Lin Xiao retreated to the side and prepared to watch the show. What? You put me in this space, do you want to kill me? Aren't you afraid of being killed by Hua Wuming who's waiting outside? He's very angry that you guys disappeared from his hands. Now you've taken me away from his side, are you trying to provoke him? If you do this, even if you get out of here, will you be able to escape his pursuit? Can you escape his pursuit? Yang Cheng stared at the two of them and said. As he spoke, he secretly sized up Lin Xiao. It seemed that this man he had never seen before was the space ability user. He didn't expect this man to be shorter than him, and his figure was also quite thin. His grip was so strong that it felt like an iron clamp when he grabbed his neck. He couldn't move at all. Du Yuanqing looked at him coldly and said, I told you that you're too greedy. You'll be killed by your own greed. I didn't expect my words to come true so quickly. He thought about how this former teammate had betrayed him and framed him for his own benefit. He wasn't really sad, after all, they were already used to this kind of thing in the past 5 years. So now he was filled with killing intent. He didn't betray others, but others wanted to kill him. Then there was no need for him to show mercy. In this post-apocalyptic world, only the strong could live to the end. Killing people outside the base, no one could do anything about it. Clang! Before Yang Cheng could reply, Long Qingying pulled out her saber abruptly. The blade was pointed in Yang Cheng's direction, but her mouth was directed at Du Yuanqing. Don't talk so much nonsense. If you don't make a move, I'll do it. Her expression was cold, her eyes sharp. A thick killing intent enveloped her body. No, you said you'd give him to me. Du Yuanqing took a step forward and stretched out his hand to block Long Qingying. His eyes were fixed on Yang Cheng, and his other hand flashed with electricity. Seeing Du Yuanqing's action, Yang Cheng subconsciously took a step back. He shouted in panic, "Wait a minute. You should know that if you kill me, you'll be dead once I leave this space. Huo Wuming will definitely burn you to ashes." His strength was originally one level lower than Du Yuanqing. Even if he was a max level 4, he couldn't compare to Du Yuanqing, who had already broken through to level 5. Moreover, Du Yuanqing's ability was the more aggressive electric type. In any case, even if he doesn't kill you, he'll still burn us to ashes. Du Yuanqing was unmoved, the corners of his mouth hooked up in a sarcastic smile. But there wasn't a hint of a smile in his eyes, only cold killing intent. But just as he was about to wave his hand and release a big move, his movement suddenly stopped. Then he turned his head to look at his hand. The electricity. And okay, there was electricity. But why couldn't he throw it out? Suddenly discovering that his ability couldn't be thrown out, Du Yuanqing swung his hand in Yang Cheng's direction in disbelief. No. Chapter 123. Seeing that Du Yuanqing was about to attack, Yang Cheng reflexively crossed his hands in front of his face to block. He prepared to use his wind ability to dodge. In the end, he didn't feel any wind. No, there was wind, but it couldn't support him. This time even Yang Cheng was stunned. He didn't feel the wind under his feet, and immediately felt that Du Yuanqing's attack was about to land on him. It's over. He thought to himself, not good. Then, just as he was prepared to be electrocuted. But nothing happened. The wind that he wanted to use didn't appear, and he thought it was his own problem. But the opponent's attack didn't land on him either. What was going on? Yang Cheng put down his arm in confusion and looked in Du Yuanqing's direction, only to find that he was also staring at his hand that was flashing with lightning with a strange expression. The same puzzled expression. The two of them noticed each other's movements at the same time and stared at each other. Then they saw the puzzled expression in each other's eyes. They were both stunned for a moment. But very quickly, Du Yuanqing controlled the main attack and realized that his lightning ability couldn't be used at this time. The opponent's appearance also showed that his ability couldn't be used. He immediately pulled out the pistol on his waist. Seeing Du Yuanqing pull out a gun, this was no longer a joke. Yang Cheng's scalp exploded and he turned to run. Yang Cheng's gun had already been taken away by Lin Xiao, so he could only take a beating. But when he turned around, there was a lake on one side and a grassland on the other. It was too late to run to the grassland, but the lake was closer. He immediately made a decision and jumped into the lake. Bang! The sound of a gunshot rang in the air, and there was a wave of echoes and vibrations. Plop! Then there was the sound of water. Yang Cheng jumped into Lin Xiao's lake. But soon, the ripples on the surface of the water were dyed red. Lin Xiao couldn't see, but she quickly smelled blood. She immediately knew that Du Yuanqing's bullet had hit Yang Cheng, but she didn't know if he was dead or not. Hit! But he jumped in. Do you know what's at the bottom of the lake? Long Qingying quickly rushed to the side of the lake and looked at the blood on the surface. She stared into the water. Yang Cheng was nowhere to be seen. She turned to Lin Xiao and asked. Lin Xiao thought about it. It seemed like there were no other creatures down there besides the vines. She shook her head. He stood by the lake and looked at the ripples. He didn't know if Yang Cheng had fallen into the lake. Will become what? He didn't get hurt when he went down, but the other zombies went down. Unlike Xiadong, who had turned into a strange zombie. Just like the wind zombies, they were directly sucked dry. What would happen if a living person went down? Lin Xiao indicated that she did not know either. This lake was much more mysterious than she had imagined. Du Yuanyuan walked to the lakeside with his gun. The three of them stood in a row and stared at the rippling water. Isn't this your space? You don't know what's under the water? Then why did you throw me into the water? Du Yuanqing felt that Lin Xiao shook his head, indicating that he did not know what was under the water. Lin Xiao glanced at him and didn't say anything. No, he didn't write anything to respond to him. Long Qingying held her saber and stared at the surface of the lake. The three of them silently stared at the water for a minute, only to find that the ripples on the water kept moving. It wasn't calm. In the past, this lake was calm without any ripples when there was nothing in the water. But now it kept moving. This clearly told the three people on the shore that Yang Cheng must have encountered something in the water. Only after 10 minutes did they see an object slowly float up from the deeper part of the water. Looking at the clothes, needless to say, everyone recognized that it was Yang Cheng. But at this time, Yang Cheng was floating motionlessly on the water, with his back facing up and his face down. And what made people feel strange was that he didn't float like a normal corpse. Most of his body was submerged in the water. Only his head and chest were above the water. Instead, it was like a very dry piece of wood. His whole body floated up. It seemed like this wasn't a corpse, but a hollow piece of plastic or a sponge. What's going on? He's dead? Du Yuanxing's expression was also strange as he stared at Yang Cheng's body that was above the water. And Lin Xiao smelled Yang Cheng's body. There was no smell of a living person. He was indeed dead. But at this time her mind was thinking about other things. This lake had soaked a dead person before, it had soaked zombies, and now it had soaked a dead person. Should she still drink the water in this lake in the future? Although she knew that the energy in the lake could purify the virus, and this lake wasn't small. But this was a little hard to accept. Drinking water soaked in dead people and zombies. She had been bathing in the water before. Why didn't she feel disgusted when she drank the water soaked in her own body? Wasn't this drinking her own bathwater? Lin Xiao. Fuck. She suddenly felt a little disgusted. What should she do? Just as Lin Xiao was imagining herself soaking in the water and drinking water or cooking food for the little boy, she comforted herself that it was okay. The lake was so big. There was also a lot of water, so she couldn't drink her own bathwater, and she avoided the place where she often bathed. At this time, Yang Cheng's body seemed to be pushed by something, and it was pushed towards the three of them. Is there something in the lake? Seeing this, Du Yuanxing and Long Qingying both subconsciously took a few steps back. They pointed at the floating corpse and said to Lin Xiao in bewilderment. Lin Xiao came back to her senses and found that Yang Cheng's body was getting closer and closer to them. Lin Xiao immediately raised her hand and took off her sunglasses and looked directly with her eyes. She immediately saw a long faint shadow at the bottom of the lake. It was very thin, and it was like a tentacle, pushing Yang Cheng towards the shore from under his body. Seeing this, Lin Xiao was no stranger. It was the green vine at the bottom of the lake. But how did Yang Cheng die? Did he drown to death? Or was he shot by Du Yuanxing? Seeing Yang Cheng's body getting closer and closer, it stopped at the shallow water less than 3 meters from their feet. The vine immediately shrank towards the bottom of the lake. Lin Xiao bent down to pick up her pants, took off her shoes and stepped into the water. Although Yang Cheng's body was about 3 meters away from the shore, the water here was very shallow. After Lin Xiao walked down, she went to Yang Cheng's side, and then dragged him to the shore. After reaching the shore, her pants were still wet. But she didn't care. Instead, she immediately squatted beside Yang Cheng's body to study the cause of his death and his current abnormal appearance after death. Chapter 124. After dragging Yang Cheng's corpse in front of them, the three of them felt that the scene in front of them was somewhat incomprehensible. Of course, Lin Xiao had some guesses. From the moment she dragged Yang Cheng out of the water, she felt that something was wrong. A moment ago he was still alive and well, but now he had turned into a corpse without any life force. But he wasn't as heavy and silent as a normal corpse, he was very light. When Lin Xiao went into the lake and reached out to pull his clothes, she felt that his weight wasn't right. He was a man about 1.7 meters tall. He wasn't fat, but he wasn't thin either. He was at least 120 kilograms, but when she dragged him, it didn't feel like she was dragging 120 kilograms. It felt like he was half as light. He was very light, about 50 to 60 kilograms. This wasn't the weight of a normal dead person. After a person died, they would weigh more than when they were alive. But this Yang Cheng was very light. What was going on with his weight being reduced by half? Moreover, his skin was shriveled and his muscles contracted. It was as if all the water in his body had been sucked dry. Not only was his blood drained, but all the other fluids in his body were also drained. What's going on? Was he sucked dry? Du Yuanxing's eyes widened as he looked at Yang Cheng, who had become a dried corpse. Thinking about 10 minutes ago, this person was still talking to him normally, but now he suddenly became like this. Felt so scary. It wasn't that he hadn't seen dead people before, But the ones he saw the most in the apocalypse were of course dead people and zombies. But he had only been dead for a few minutes and he was sucked dry like this. It was a little horrifying. Long Qingying also looked at Lin Xiao with a strange and puzzled expression. What's in this lake of yours? Eating people. Du Yuanqing also stared at Lin Xiao, his eyes filled with fear. He thought about how he was also thrown into the water. Lin Xiao looked back at the two of them, stood up and put on his glasses. Then he wrote 2 words on the paper, ghost. Long Qingying and Du Yuanqing. Was there really a ghost or was he just fooling them? But no matter if it was real or just a bluff, there must be something terrible in this lake. The two of them marked the lake as dangerous at the same time. Du Yuanqing squatted down and poked Yang Cheng's facial muscles. It was found to be very hard, like a dry tree trunk. Is his energy core still there? Could it have been sucked away as well? He asked. Lin Xiao and Long Qingying also looked at Yang Cheng's twisted head. Lin Xiao suddenly squatted down again. The claws on his right hand lit up. Seeing her flashing claws, Du Yuanqing subconsciously jumped up and took a step back. Lin Xiao glanced at him, then turned around and waved his hand. The claws slashed towards Yang Cheng's skull. She didn't say that she didn't feel any energy from Yang Cheng's body. It was as if all the energy in his body had disappeared. It wasn't like the time when he was captured, when he was brimming with energy. Pooh! With a soft sound, Yang Cheng's head was sliced open like a watermelon. Then they saw something interesting. Yang Cheng's brain, even his brain, had shrunk into a ball. It also had a dry and shriveled texture. Lin Xiao couldn't help but poke at it with her claws. She found that it was the kind that was dry like a sponge that had absorbed water and then dried. It was hard. She directly dug out the brain and held it in her hands to break it. Very easily, she broke off a small piece of powdery brain. Lin Xiao. What the hell was this? How did a good brain become like this? She continued to break it, and soon the whole brain was broken into pieces by Lin Xiao. A dull white crystal core appeared in her hands. Lin Xiao just squeezed it lightly. This crystal core, which was similar to a corpse core, shattered into powder. There wasn't even a trace of energy fluctuation. Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying. It turned out that not only had Yang Cheng's flesh and blood been sucked dry, even his energy had been sucked away. Lin Xiao clapped her hands and stood up again. She closed her eyes and looked outside. She found that Huo Wu was still guarding outside with some people. This time they didn't search randomly, as if they knew that they wouldn't be able to find him. Perhaps after Lin Xiao directly brought Yang Cheng in, Huo Wu was sure that Lin Xiao, the spatial ability user, was here. So he decided to keep guarding and start wasting time with Lin Xiao. He didn't believe that she wouldn't come out of the space. He knew that living people could enter the space of many spatial ability users. But the length of time varied depending on the level of the ability or other factors. In any case, it was impossible for her to stay inside forever. There would come a day when she would come out. Of course, Lin Xiao would come out, and very soon. She directly turned invisible again, and then quietly sneaked up the building next to her. When she ran to the top of a 7-story building, she directly came out of the space. When she came out, she was carrying 2 things in her hands. As soon as she appeared, she directly threw them downstairs. Then she quickly turned invisible again. Poof, poof, 2 strange sounds of objects falling were heard. It sounded like the sound of a human body landing on the ground, but it felt a lot lighter. Moreover, after these 2 things hit the ground, it felt as if a piece of wood had fallen onto a concrete floor. Before Huo Wu could react, he saw 2 humanoid objects being thrown in front of him like garbage. And he still didn't see the figure. Not to mention seeing, he didn't even notice anything. The people guarding around were also stunned when 2 humanoid corpses suddenly fell. They didn't know how to react, but they looked at Huo Wu's face that was as black as the bottom of a pot. Everyone was quiet and didn't dare to move. At this time, Huo Wu's face couldn't be any darker. The corners of his eyes twitched slightly, and the dark waves in his eyes surged violently as if something was about to burst out. The muscles on his face also twitched, and his teeth were clenched so hard that his cheeks bulged. Needless to say, everyone could feel the dark aura rolling around his body from afar. Moreover, the location of the 2 corpses was ingeniously thrown directly to the empty space 2 meters in front of Huo Wu. This was a clear provocation to him, a slap to his face. So everyone was silent. Huo Wu stared at the corpse in Yang Cheng's clothes, gritted his teeth, and tried to calm the anger and killing intent in his heart. Then he jumped down from the high platform, walked to the side of the two corpses and looked at them. Very good. In addition to Yang Cheng's corpse, there was also the corpse of a zombie. And whether it was Yang Cheng's head shell or the zombie's head shell, they were both shaved off. This meant that the zombie core inside had been taken away. While Huo Wu was looking at the two corpses, Lin Xiao on the roof had already jumped from one building to the roof of another. Chapter 125. Lin Xiao, who was invisible, felt that her body was even lighter. Therefore, it was not a problem for her to jump from the top of the building. She could jump from the top of the building to the bottom of the building, and the distance between them was about 7 or 8 meters. Felt as though he was flying. It felt great. After jumping a few times, Lin Xiao fell in love with the feeling of leaping. She was like a transparent human cheetah running on the top of the building for more than 10 minutes. Lin Xiao was already very far away. She was at least 10 kilometers away from Huo Wu. Then a white shadow quickly caught up from behind, but it didn't jump around like Lin Xiao. Qiu Lily was still standing elegantly. She flashed from one place to another and soon arrived next to Lin Xiao. Not far below, there were two zombies running next to her. When Lin Xiao saw her, he stopped. When Qiu Lily landed next to her, she crooked her finger at her. Ah, where are the two humans? Qiu Lily stood next to Lin Xiao and called out to her. She saw Lin Xiao put Long Qingying and Du Yuanxing into the space. Lin Xiao took out her notebook and wrote, "They are going to follow me back to City B to find someone." Ah, back to City B? Qiu Lily looked at her strangely. Didn't they come here to find someone? Lin Xiao nodded and wrote, "The person I am looking for is now going to City B." So now they had to go back. She didn't know where Lin Feng and the others were. You are going to bring those two people? Qiu Lily asked unhappily. She didn't like humans, so she didn't like those two people joining her team. Unhappy. Unhappy. We can't have fun together anymore. Lin Xiao was speechless. Feeling Qiu Lily's childish mood, Lin Xiao felt helpless. Although Qiu Lily was very strong, but her character and mind might still be the same as before she became a zombie. She knew that Qiu Lily was repulsed by humans, so she had to take it slow. Perhaps this was a good opportunity for him. Not only did they want Qiu Lily to accept contact with humans, they also wanted Long Qingying and Du Yuanxing to accept the existence of zombies like them. They didn't harm people, but they didn't want humans to shout and kill them when they saw them. Lin Xiao thought for a moment, then wrote on the paper, "They are helpful to me, they can tell me a lot of information." Qiu Lily still looked unhappy. She pouted and turned her face to the other side. However, he didn't say anything else. Lin Xiao smiled, knowing that Qiu Lily was compromising. She jumped to the ground and entered the space again. He appeared beside the two of them and patted their shoulders. Then, before the two of them could react, he brought them out of the space. The two people who were suddenly brought out had blank looks on their faces, not knowing what was going on. He's out? Where is this? Du Yuanxing reacted very quickly when he came out. He looked around and asked. Lin Xiao took out his notebook and wrote, "I'm more than 10 kilometers away from the place Huo Wu is guarding." He was going to drive to City B. Drive? Oh, there's a car in your space. When Du Yuanxing saw that Lin Xiao wanted to drive, he immediately remembered that he saw a light off-road vehicle in her space. A few zombies wanted to drive. Are you really a zombie? You're not a human in disguise, right? He turned his head and stared at Lin Xiao. He really felt that Lin Xiao was no different from a normal person, except for the scars on her face. But after the end of the world, there were many people with scars on their faces, so it wasn't strange anymore. Lin Xiao ignored him and disappeared in front of the two of them. After a while, she threw a car out, then she took out a barrel of oil. After filling the car's fuel tank, she sat directly in the driver's seat. Qiu Lily, who had been standing on the side without saying anything, immediately went to the passenger seat. It wasn't the first time that Du Yuanxing and Long Qingying saw this female zombie. Just the clean and beautiful white princess dress was very eye-catching. Furthermore, she was a zombie. The two of them looked at each other. Long Qingying originally wanted to stay on the roof of the car. At this time, Lin Xiao handed over another piece of paper. "There's a zombie on the roof, you should sit in the car." Long Qingying. "There's more?" Wasn't she already sitting in the passenger seat? Long Qingying thought that the zombie Lin Qiao was talking about was Cho Lily. She looked at Cho Lily, who was sitting in the passenger seat, with a puzzled expression. Bang! Bang! At this time 2 light sounds came from the roof of the car. The 2 of them turned their heads and saw 2 zombies that were either level 3 or 4 lying on the roof of the car. They were staring at them with glowing eyes and drooling. Long Qingying and Du Yuanxing. These 2 looked like normal zombies. They had black eyes and were on all fours. Especially the way they stared at them, as if they were looking at 2 roasted ducks. At this time, Cho Lily suddenly opened her mouth and screamed, startling the 2 of them and Lin Qiao, who was about to drive. Long Qingying, Du Yuanxing, Lin Qiao. What a test of the heart. This thought flashed through Long Qingying and Lin Qiao's minds at the same time. Lin Qiao was already a little used to Cho Lily's occasional actions. After being called by Cho Lily, the 2 zombies immediately turned their heads and sat properly. They were no longer looking at the 2 humans, but they were still sneaking glances at them from the corner of their eyes. So the 2 of them immediately got into the back seat of the car and sat properly. Feeling that there was a layer of roof between them, their hearts inexplicably felt a little more at ease. But then the 2 of them thought that the 2 zombies would directly pierce their claws through the roof from the top of their heads and then grab them. Lin Qiao didn't care about the psychological activities of the 2 of them. He started the car and drove in the direction of another road in High City. With Long Qingying, at least she should know which road Lin Feng and the others took. This was also the reason why Lin Qiao wanted to hook up with Long Qingying. At this time in High City base, Wu Chengwe brought his daughter, Xiao Yunlong, and Mengyu back to their residence. As the leader's residence, it wasn't luxurious. It was just an ordinary 3-story building. Apart from the fact that the furniture inside had been replaced with some high-end and comfortable ones, the difference between the 2 other leaders was too great. The others either occupied the best and safest villa, or occupied the cleanest and best apartment on a tall building. Only he and his daughter lived in an ordinary small building. Of course, this small building wasn't just for him and his daughter. Xiao Yunlong and Mengyu also lived here. The 3 of them had been together since the end of the world. Now on the surface they were all good friends, roommates and gay friends, but their relationship was a little complicated. It was like you love me, I love him, he doesn't love me, he loves him. For example, Xiao Yunlong liked Mengyu a little, but Mengyu had a better impression of Wu Chengyue. But Wu Chengyue's mind was only on his daughter, and he had no feelings for other women. He always saw Mengyu as a little sister. Chapter 126. As for why these big shots wanted to live in this small building, it was because Xiao Budian did not like tall places, nor did he like big places. Therefore Wu Chengyue, who was obsessed with his daughter, immediately changed to an environment that his daughter liked. So the other 2 also moved in. The building was not big and had 3 floors. On the first floor there was a living room, a kitchen and a bathroom. On the second floor there was a study and 2 bedrooms. The third floor had a balcony and 2 bedrooms. As for Wu Chengyue and Xiao Budian, they lived in the 2 bedrooms on the second floor, although he really wanted to sleep with his daughter. However, Tiny Tot didn't like to sleep with others, so Wu Chengyue was chased to the next room to sleep. Although he had to visit his daughter's room 5 or 6 times a night before he felt at ease. Mengyu lived on the 3rd floor. In their residence, other than the numerous soldiers standing guard, there was only the 2 of them. No other idlers came in. There were no nannies or servants. It was all because the little guy didn't like strangers. Even Xiao Liqing, who was Wu Chengyue's assistant and driver, was not allowed to get close to him. After entering the hall, Wu Chengyue put Tiny on the sofa and let her play by herself. Xiao Yunlong walked behind and said, "The news is still being verified, but it is judged according to the previous news. I reckon it's true this time. However, no one knows if Netherflame is really dead. Currently everyone is guessing." Wu Chengyue sat on the sofa and poured a glass of water while saying, "They probably haven't received the news yet. Send someone to inform them about the Netherworld King's base. Let's not talk about their leader's situation for now. We don't know much about it either. It has yet to be verified. Let's see what they plan to do next." Xiao Yunlong nodded and said, "The news of the base has been confirmed, but the situation of their leader's family, should we send someone to support them? According to the time, they should be almost at the border of Xia province if they want to escape." Wu Chongyue glanced at him and said, "First, ask Li Jing and the others if they want to receive them themselves. It's easier for them to do this kind of thing. We'll just send them a small team to assist them." Xiao Yunlong nodded. Mengyu sat by the side, holding a stack of documents in her hand as she listened to the conversation between the two of them. "Send someone to inform them tomorrow and see what they plan to do." "Oh yeah, you still haven't found any traces of the zombie?" Wu Chongyue gave his daughter a glass of water, then stood up and walked towards the kitchen. Xiao Yunlong glanced at Xiao Budian and Mengyu, who was reading the information, before following Wu Chongyue to the kitchen. "I didn't find it. Are you sure it went south?" Wu Chongyue walked into the kitchen, rolled up his sleeves, and took out some ingredients from the fridge to prepare dinner. He leaned against the doorframe and asked while holding his arm. After the apocalypse, solar energy was the only source of electricity. There was also a generator, but the generator needed gasoline to start. After the apocalypse, gasoline was scarce and people rarely used generators. Therefore, Wu Chongyue could still use electricity normally every day. But now, everyone would use electricity at a fixed time. To save energy. After 5 years of construction, the base had improved a lot. The water and electricity in the center of the base could be used normally. In order to neutralize the zombie virus, every base was equipped with an important scientific laboratory. All the surviving medical scientists were gathered together to conduct various experiments. They tried every means to find an antidote or a way to neutralize the zombie virus. But in the past 5 years, in addition to catching a lot of zombies for experiments and sacrificing a lot of humans, there was still no clue. However, the experiment continued and did not stop. Wu Chongyue was washing the vegetables while heating the oil in the pan. After skillfully washing and cutting the vegetables, he began to stir-fry them in the pan. He said while stir-frying, "I feel that it wanted to go south." At that time, its direction and route had always been south, and it chose a shortcut, and only took a detour if it couldn't get through. Xiao Yunlong nodded, then said doubtfully, "But now the people I sent have no news at all. It seems that its whereabouts are too difficult to find." Wu Chongyue smiled. "Of course it has a space. If there is anything wrong, it will immediately hide in the space. Can you find it?" Xiao Yunlong sighed and said, "You said it was so magical, I really want to see it with my own eyes." Wu Chongyue thought of that strange zombie. His smile didn't change, but there was also some interest in it. Obviously, he was still very interested in the zombie. If there was a chance, he also wanted to have more contact with it and learn more about the zombie. In fact, what he wanted to know more was how the zombie communicated with his baby daughter. "By the way, I heard that Yang Jianhua, one of the former deputy leaders of Underworld King's base, is now hunting down the family of Dark Flame. I don't know if he will succeed. I heard that he has been eyeing Dark Flame's sister. This time he won't let her go." Xiao Yunlong suddenly thought of something and said. Wu Chongyue was busy in the kitchen while replying to him. "Don't you know that Yang Jianhua approached Dark Flame in order to get Lin Wenwen's heart? What life-saving benefactor, everything else is fake." Hearing this news, Xiao Yunlong froze for a moment, then raised his eyebrows. Very surprised, he asked, "Well, you mean the matter of Yang Jianhua saving Dark Flame a few years ago? Is there any inside story?" Wu Chongyue replied, "I only heard some news from the people of Earth Dragon Base. Yang Jianhua was actually a guest of Long Yubai's bed before the end of the world. Then Yang Jianhua followed Dark Flame after the end of the world, but secretly still had contact with Long Yubai. And it was a very confidential contact. So what do you think? I heard that Dark Flame was besieged in the zombie city, and it was Long Yubai who sent people to help Yang Jianhua create an opportunity." Xiao Yunlong's eyes widened and he said in surprise, "Damn. You mean someone dug a hole for the underworld fire a few years ago and made her fall into it?" Wu Chongyue nodded and said in agreement, "Isn't that so? But I don't know if she knew about this before she died. Otherwise, she would have died of anger even if she was not attacked by a strong enemy." Xiao Yunlong sighed, "That's true. Hey, but you said that Yang Jianhua went for Dark Flame's sister. But you also said that he was a guest of Long Yubai's bed. What's going on? Doesn't he like men?" Wu Chongyue said. "Who said he only likes men? I'm bisexual, okay?" Thinking of Yang Jianhua and Long Yubai rolling on the same bed, Xiao Yunlong couldn't help shuddering. Hey likes men and likes women. This taste is really enough. Chapter 127. The next day, someone knocked on the door of Li Zheng and the others' residence early in the morning. Who came so early in the morning? Lin Yu glanced at the other people in the room and asked. As he spoke, he walked to the door and prepared to open it. Maybe people from the Sea City base, Li Zheng said. He meant that the person in charge of the Sea City base was a civil servant or something. Lin Yu opened the door and saw two men in military uniforms standing outside. One of them they had seen before. He was the deputy leader Xiao Yunlong who was here before. Captain Huang? Why are you here? It's too early. Lin Yu looked at Xiao Yunlong's deputy Huang Ming. Huang Ming was standing outside the door with one of his men, and the two were carrying a few bags. Seeing Lin Yu come out, he smiled and handed over the bags. Oh, I have something to ask you. You haven't had breakfast yet. We brought this from the canteen for you. Eat it while it's hot. Lin Yu opened the door with a smile and politely thanked them as he took the bags. Thank you. Come on, bring us some breakfast too. Thank you for the trouble. Huang Ming walked in, but his man stayed outside the door and did not follow. Lin Yu watched Huang Ming come in before closing the door. Li Zheng pulled out a chair for Huang Ming and let him sit down. He curiously asked, "What trouble you to come so early in the morning?" After Huang Ming sat down, he looked at the people in the room and said, "Oh, you eat breakfast first. I'll tell you after eating. By the way, are you used to living here? Is it too crowded for 5 people? I'll change to a bigger room for you. Do you want it?" He did not immediately answer Li Zheng's question, but changed the subject. Lin Yu and Li Zheng looked at each other. Both of them had no idea what Deputy Huang was up to. Seeing that he insisted that they eat breakfast first, they let him be. They put the breakfast on the table and opened it. There were only a dozen steamed buns and buns, but they were all white flour. This was a very extravagant breakfast. There were exactly 5 of them, and each of them only needed to take 2. Li Zheng took a bite of the bun and replied to Huang Ming with a smile. "Oh, it's okay. Don't bother. We lived quite well, but Lin Yu slept on the floor. It's not a big deal. At most, we'll step on it when we go to the toilet at night." Huang Ming laughed and said, "Ha ha ha. Don't tell me you purposely stepped on his face." Lin Yu's mouth was stuffed with buns as he said, "If you dare, I can cripple their second brother immediately. Do you believe me?" Thinking about how he was lying on the ground at night, and how these guys kept stepping over his feet, he could totally kick them up. Good position, isn't it, right at their crotch? Puffed. Feng Mingyu laughed and said, "Brother Lin Yu, so this is what you think every time we step on you." Lin Yu rolled his eyes and focused on eating his buns. The steamed bun wasn't big to begin with, so he finished it in 2 bites. After finishing the bun, he continued to nibble on the steamed bun. He said to Huang Ming, "There's no need. We men don't have any requests. Anyway, we won't be staying here for long. When our leader comes over, we'll move out." The others nodded in unison. Seeing that they were almost done eating, they were all drinking water from their cups. Only then did Huang Ming explain the purpose of his visit. He put away the smile on his face and said seriously, "I'm here today to tell you a piece of news about your base. You also know that the people of the Earth Dragon base have been coveting your base for a long time, and this time it's almost time to make a move. Your leader of the Death Flame asked you to come to our base in advance to cooperate. But our deputy leader received a message tomorrow morning. A few days after you left, your Netherworld King's base was breached." Suddenly hearing that their base had been breached, Li Zheng and the others immediately stopped what they were doing. At the same time, they looked at Huang Ming with a face full of disbelief. "Impossible. Didn't they say that the operation of the Earth Dragon base would be 5 months later? How is it possible that they attacked as soon as we left? Moreover, our base won't be breached so quickly. Our leader is very strong." Feng Mingyu's eyes widened, and she blurted out with a face full of disbelief. Her tone was filled with panic and anxiety. They knew that the people of the Earth Dragon base had joined forces with other bases to attack them. Even their leader felt that the Netherworld King's base might not be able to protect itself. That was why they had come all the way to Sea City base in advance to seek cooperation. The original intention was to find a location in Ja province to build another base. However, because there were a lot of people in the Netherworld King's base, therefore they wanted to seek cooperation from Sea City base first, asking them to temporarily take in the women, children, and ordinary people in the Netherworld King's base who had no fighting power. They didn't need a good place to live, even a big shed would do. As long as they could have the protection of the base's big walls, it was fine to live anywhere in the base. After the doomsday, every base built a big wall that was 20 meters high. All the humans in the base were protected inside. It also prevented the invasion of ordinary zombies. Therefore, the leader of their base planned to send some people to Sea City base first, and then collect men with stronger fighting power and strength to build a temporary base next to Sea City. Then they would go to Zhe province to build their own base. In fact, the Death Flame had already sent people to discuss this matter with the 3 leaders of Sea City. This time they finally sent Li Zheng and the others. Looking for Wu Changyue was just to make a final confirmation. They randomly found a location for the temporary base, and when the first batch of people arrived, they would start building it. At that time, Sea City would also provide manpower to help. Of course, the Netherworld King's base would also provide some materials in exchange for help. The news they received was that the Earth Dragon base would make a move in 5 months, so using these 5 months to move most of the people away was about the right time. However, now the man in front of him told him that their base had been broken in a few days after they left. It had already been broken through. They had left the base to come here, and it had only been a month since they left. According to what he said, it had already been more than 20 days since the base was destroyed. Moreover, their leader, deputy leader, and most of the experts were still in the base. How could it be broken through so quickly? Everyone had the same thought as Feng Mingyu. They all didn't believe it was true. Huang Ming said, "Don't worry, there is a reason for this. You actually don't know one of your 2 deputy leaders, Yang Jianhua, is actually an undercover agent of the Earth Dragon base. He leaked the news of your base and our base to the Earth Dragon base, and then brought the fake news that the Earth Dragon base would make a move in 5 months to your leader. That's why it became like this." Impossible. As soon as Huang Ming finished speaking, the other 5 people immediately said in unison. Chapter 128. Li Zheng was visibly agitated. How could it be the deputy chief? It can't be Deputy Chief Yang. Who in Hades doesn't know he saved the chief's life? The chief treats him better than he would his own brother. How could he be a spy from Earth Dragon? Impossible. It can't be. Captain's right. How could it be Deputy Chief Yang? He's like a brother and sister to the chief. He's been good to the chief too. How could he harm the chief? Lin Yu said, shaking his head. His expression was the same as everyone else's. Huang Ming looked at their excited faces and sighed. Did your deputy chief Yang tell your chief that Long Yubai joined forces with the leaders of Skyfire base in Yunnan and Sichuan to attack your base? And 5 months from now? Do you know how many people have come to attack your base in half a month? Earth Dragon, Skyfire, and Songyun base. Including Long Yubai, there were as many as 5 level 7 arcanists. Yang Jianhua also drugged your chief's water to suppress his discipline. The others stared wide-eyed, unable to believe what Huang Ming had just said. Logic told them that as the right-hand man of a deputy chief, Huang Ming had no reason to lie to them. Their leader must have sent them to tell them this. When they didn't speak, Huang Ming continued patiently. I know this is a big blow to you and you don't want to believe it. But we've already verified it, and you'll know soon enough. There are 2 more pieces of news I want to tell you. One good and one bad. Which one do you want to hear first? Good news. Bad news. They all spoke at the same time, but their choices were different. Li Zheng looked at them and they quieted down. He turned to Huang Ming. Then let's start with the bad news. We already know the worst. What could be worse than the destruction of your base? Huang Ming nodded and said, I just said that Earth Dragon sent 5 level 7 ability users this time. So your leader was besieged. Under siege, she couldn't control her discipline. We've burned half of your base and many of your people have died. After that, she was chased by the 5 to the former Dongqing district of the coastal city and self-destructed her energy core on a cliff. It was said that 2 of the 5 level 7 adepts were severely injured and 1 was killed. However, this news still needed to be verified. At the very least, we only know that the nether flame self-destructed. But no one saw it with their own eyes. Everyone, send people to find the location where the nether flame self-destructed. Hearing this grievous news, Li Zheng and the others were speechless. Their leader was besieged to death by 5 level 7 experts. What did that mean? Wouldn't that mean that all the leaders of the 3 bases were gathered together? 5 against 1, even if their leader was very strong. But he couldn't beat 5 of them. In such a situation, it was normal for them to drag one of them down with them by self-destructing. Impossible. This was impossible. Even if our leader can't beat him, he can still run away. Her ability was so special and powerful. Even if there were 5 of them, it would not be that easy to kill her. Why would she choose to self-destruct? If she dies, what will happen to Captain, Madam and Miss? Lin Yu murmured with a dull expression. Yes, the leader won't die. She won't leave her family behind. Li Zheng's eyes also lit up, and he said with some kind of inexplicable hope. Huang Ming then said, "This is the good news. Because of your leader's efforts, her brother Lin Feng's family, her mother, and her younger siblings have all successfully escaped. But now they are being hunted by Yang Jianhua. Our information only tells us that they have entered the Min province. We haven't found out anything else yet." The others immediately looked at him and said, "You said that Captain's family has escaped, but why are they being hunted by Deputy Leader Yang? Why would he do that?" Li Zheng, Lin Yu, and the others did not believe that their leader's family was being hunted by Yang Jianhua, because their leader's family used to be like family to Yang Jianhua. Why would Yang Jianhua go after them? Was there any humanity left? Huang Ming said, "Whether you believe it or not, our information is true. And our leader is preparing to send people to help Lin Feng and the others immediately. He sent me to tell you the news. The other thing is to ask for your opinion. Do you want to go and help Lin Feng and the others? After all, they are in a very bad situation now." Go. Go. Let's all go. Yes, we must go. I want to see if it was really Yang Jianhua who did it. As soon as Huang Ming finished speaking, the others immediately responded. They did not believe what others said, so they could only go and see with their own eyes if it was true. Huang Ming nodded. "Well, we will set off in the afternoon. This time I will lead the team to help. Although our people may not be able to deal with Yang Jianhua, but we can deal with his shrimp soldiers and crab generals. With your participation we will also have more strength." Huang Ming was only a 5th level ice superpower. But his ice superpower was also very powerful, so Xiao Yunlong sent him with dozens of elite troops to help Lin Feng and the others. And Li Zheng was also a 5th level superpower, so it would naturally be more convenient for him to join. I still don't believe that the leader will die. She won't die. We not only have to pick up Captain and the others, but we also have to find the place where the leader self-destructed, Li Zheng said. Yes. The others nodded. That's right, how is our other deputy leader now? Feng Mingyu suddenly asked. Huang Ming replied, "Are you asking about your deputy leader Yuan? He doesn't seem to be dead, and he seems to have been missing for a month. So now it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. But according to our information, he disappeared when the Earth Dragon base came to attack the city. That is, when you left you lost any news of him." The others looked at each other and asked strangely, "You mean Deputy Leader Yuan also disappeared on the day we left? What's going on?" Huang Ming shook his head and replied, "We're not too sure about this. This is the information we received. But on that day there was no news of him. Maybe you can check it yourself or the truth will come out later. As long as he can still appear." The others could only nod unwillingly. Perhaps there was some inside story. Otherwise, how could their deputy leader disappear for no reason? Otherwise, according to his personality of controlling the leader, even if he died, he should not let anything happen to the leader. That's right, he was controlling the leader. No, it should be said that he was controlling the dark fire. Chapter 129. Yuan Tianxing, the Nether Flame Controller, was in despair. He never thought that Yang Jianhua was an ingrate. He actually colluded with the Earth Dragon base to betray Hades base. That day, he secretly sent Lin Yu and the others away and was about to return to the base. He inadvertently discovered that Yang Jianhua quietly left the base and went in another direction. It didn't feel right for him to appear outside the base alone at this time. Everyone now knew that the Earth Dragon base was ready to attack Hades base. Everyone was on guard. Who would run out of the base, especially young Jianhua, the deputy leader of the base? Of course he was the same. But his purpose was to escort the subordinates sent out by the leader to carry out the mission. What about young Jianhua? He had always disliked young Jianhua. One was because of jealousy, the other was because of his attitude. He was jealous of young Jianhua. He was so good to him. He protected him for everything. Although he was not his biological brother, he was better than a brother. It was because he saved Netherflame's life. As someone who had a crush on Netherflame for many years, Yuan Tianqing disliked young Jianhua very much. In addition, young Jianhua used the support of the Lin family to secretly do a lot of things. He established his own force. These Netherflames only turned a blind eye to it and even found excuses for him. Therefore, when he saw young Jianhua suspiciously appearing outside the base, he of course wanted to go and find out what was going on. But he did not expect that the person he went to see was Long Yubai, the leader of the Earth Dragon base. He was the deputy leader of the base. Why did he go to see the enemy's leader alone? Yuan Tianqing, who felt something was wrong at that time, immediately approached quietly. He wanted to find out what was going on. As a result, he saw the two men being intimate. At that time he was dumbfounded. What the hell was this? Why did he see his colleague and the enemy's leader hugging and kissing each other? And it was two men? Well, two men after the end of the world, this was nothing. But in terms of position, they should be enemies, right? Since when did they get together? However, before he could figure out what was going on, Long Yubai, who was a level 7 arcanist, discovered his existence first. Thus they began to fight. As soon as the fight began, he, a level 6 arcanist, fought against a team of level 7, level 6, and 3 level 5 arcanists. Of course he had no chance of winning. Therefore Yuan Tianqing, who had been missing for a month, was only captured. He was locked up in a place that no one knew about. Fortunately, young Jianhua didn't know that he had a secret weapon. So after locking him up for more than half a month, young Jianhua finally released the secret weapon. Thus Yuan Tianqing quietly escaped. But it was too late. After he escaped, he heard the news that the Netherworld King's base had been breached. Their leader had self-destructed and perished together with the enemy. Only the leader's family escaped. The self-destruction of the Netherflame was a huge blow to Yuan Tianqing. It was normal to feel heartache when the woman he had a crush on died. But he was a mature man, so after the pain he would not let go. Very quickly, he endured it and heard that the Netherflame had forcefully sent his family out. Now her family was being hunted, and the person who was hunting them happened to be young Jianhua. Therefore, Yuan Tianqing dragged his injured body. He planned to help Lin Feng and the others first, and then find young Jianhua to take revenge. He was injured by him and Long Yubai and was locked up. Now it was young Jianhua who killed the woman he liked. He had to take revenge. Therefore, whether it was to take revenge or to save Lin Feng and the others, he had to find them first. After that, he would make other plans. Therefore, after escaping from the place where he was locked up, Yuan Tianqing followed the news and chased after Lin Feng and the others. After chasing for a few days, they just happened to reach the Min province. At this time, Lin Xiao was guided by Long Qingying. They searched for information along the way and chased after them. After chasing for 2 to 3 days, they quickly caught up. However, they didn't catch up to Lin Feng but young Jianhua's troops. At the same time, they were now back in the Zhe province. Because Lin Xiao and Qiu Lili were both high-level zombies, especially Qiu Lili, who was a very powerful level 6 red-eyed zombie. Therefore, the journey back was as smooth as when they left. Long Qingying and Du Tianqing didn't even know why Qiu Lili had red eyes, because they had never heard of it. Level 6 zombies had red eyes, and almost everyone who had seen a level 6 zombie had died. Therefore, Long Qingying and Du Yuanqing had always thought that Qiu Lili's red eyes were a mutation. Lin Xiao and the others stood on the top of a 10-story building, looking at a position a few hundred meters ahead. They stopped there. It seems that we lost the direction of the commander again. Du Yuanqing stood beside Long Qingying, looking in that direction from afar. There were a few heavily armored vehicles parked in a plaza. They used the weapons installed in the vehicles to clear the ordinary zombies on the plaza, and then the people in the vehicles appeared one after another. Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying stood together, and on the other side were Lin Xiao, Qiu Lili, and Junjun carrying the little boy. The two people subconsciously kept a distance of 2 meters from the 3 zombies. The little boy and Junjun were released by Lin Xiao in the past 2 days. They were delicate and it was very boring to keep them in the space. At first, Junjun knew that Cho Lily might control her, so she was a little afraid of Cho Lily. Later, she realized that she seemed to be very obedient to Lin Xiao, so she was slightly relieved. Lin Xiao stretched her ears to listen to the direction of the vehicles, but didn't hear the conversation over there. They had caught up with these vehicles, and they had caught up with the others this morning. Catching up with them meant that they were in the right direction. This meant that Lin Feng and the others were also heading in this direction. But after following them for a day, Lin Xiao didn't see the Yang Jianhua that Du Yuanxing and the others were talking about. These days, whenever Long Qingying and Du Yuanxing talked about the Nether Fire leader, she would stretch her ears to listen. She felt very strange now. A person with the same name as her, but with a different identity and experience. But the name of her relative was the same as her. This made her very confused. So she really wanted to see her relative as soon as possible, whether they looked the same, whether they were the family in her memory. If they were really her family, then it was the other Lin Xiao. She also wanted to know what was going on. Lin Xiao pointed in that direction, then pressed Junjun's shoulder and sent her into the space. When she came out, she turned around and jumped from this building to the roof of another building. Then it quickly leaped to another building, heading in the direction of those cars. After Lin Xiao moved, Cho Lily immediately followed her out. Chapter 130. Du Yuanxing and the other two silently watched the 2 zombies leap over the roofs of the buildings. The 2 of them could only use their legs to run downstairs. When they reached the bottom of the building, Lin Xiao was already not far from the plaza. She stopped on the roof of a nearby building and entered stealth mode. Then, he jumped down from the top and approached the heavy-duty military vehicles. After clearing the zombies on the square, the people got off the car and formed a few groups, walking to the side where there was a place to hide. It's been suffocating, now it can finally be solved. That's right. If we don't make a move, we will enter Haiqing's territory. I don't know what Chief Yang is thinking. Can't he just kill them all? And he wants to capture them alive. What do you know, he actually doesn't want to kill Lin Feng and the others. Maybe they will be useful. What use? Is it because Lin Feng and his family were very good to him? So he wants to keep them alive? Don't talk nonsense. He has his reasons for doing this. We should quietly finish peeing and go back. Hurry up. Listening to these people going to pee together, Lin Xiao finally understood why Yang Jianhua chased so far. So he wants to capture his brothers alive. But why does Yang Jianhua want to capture them alive? Lin Xiao couldn't figure it out, so she turned around and quietly moved towards the cars. Then she found the car in the middle, stepped on the outer steel frame of the car, and silently flipped to the roof. She leaned against the air vent and used her ear to listen. Have you confirmed the location? Report, it has been confirmed. It is in a warehouse 2 kilometers ahead. Don't get too close, Lin Hao's ability is very strong. He will easily discover our existence. You must maintain a distance of 500 meters. Especially not in a place with trees. Yes. It's almost time to make a move. Lin Feng is already seriously injured. This time without Lin Feng's obstruction. Let's see how they can escape from my hands. The conversation below reached Lin Xiao's ears. The other sounds were very soft. But she still heard it clearly. She frowned. This man said that Lin Feng was injured. From his tone, he should be Yang Jianhua. But for some reason, Lin Xiao vaguely felt that his voice seemed inexplicably familiar. Maybe I heard it wrong. She didn't know this person, so why did she feel a sense of familiarity? At this time, the people who had gone out to relieve themselves had all returned to their cars. Bang, bang, the sound of car doors closing was heard. 2 minutes later, the car at the side started up and began to move forward. Lin Xiao hurriedly stood up, ran 2 steps and jumped lightly. He jumped from one roof to the other. After she jumped over, she saw the car that she had been eavesdropping on earlier. This moment it was also opened. Then the other cars also drove out, but not long after. Lin Xiao noticed that the cars were all heading in different directions. Lin Xiao jumped down from the car. Then he ran up and kicked a tree by the roadside. Then he leaped towards the nearest building with the help of the support. She didn't have the ability to jump more than 10 meters, but she could still jump a few meters. She jumped from the tree to the next building, which was 3 stories high. She directly showed her claws and clawed at the wall. Then she quickly grabbed the corner of the wall and climbed up like a monkey. Soon she directly climbed to the top of the building. Then she stood at the highest point and observed the route of the cars. Slowly she found that these cars, except for the one in the middle, slowly moved forward. The other cars all took a long detour and went around to the side. But the direction of their goal was the same. Lin Xiao stood on the roof and sniffed. Soon she smelled a small human scent. It was coming from that direction. So, Lin Feng and the others were there now. Needless to say, the reason why Lin Xiao was so sure was because she smelled a few familiar scents. Very, very familiar. She didn't feel it before. Maybe she was just used to it. Or maybe her nose wasn't that sensitive. But she could still remember the smell of her family. So now that she had become a mutated zombie, her nose was a few hundred times more sensitive. This kind of smell was magnified a few hundred times. And these few scents were not only familiar, but she also smelled something else. That kind of intimate feeling as if she had found her family. Family. Suddenly 2 words floated in her heart. Lin Xiao's eyes under the glasses lit up. A green light flashed. Her eyes suddenly turned emerald green. And the light directly shone through the black mirror. If someone stood in front of her at this time, they would see a pair of light green eyes under her dark glasses. Lin Xiao was a little excited. She immediately jumped from the roof to the direction of the few scents. And at this time in the factory that Yang Jianhua and Lin Xiao had locked onto, Lin Feng was lying in a corner of the factory. The little girl and the baby-faced Cheng Wangxue were anxiously squatting beside him. The others also stood at the side, looking at him with a bad expression. A few soldiers who were also slightly injured and Lin Hao were guarding the periphery. They had their backs to Lin Feng and were looking outside to observe the situation. But their eyes would turn back from time to time, looking at Lin Feng with concern. Dad! Dad, are you okay? Sob, 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 Dad, don't die. The little girl lay beside Lin Feng and said worriedly with a crying face. Although Lin Feng couldn't move, he was still awake. At this time, he still forced a smile and comforted his daughter. It's okay, Xiaolu. Dad won't leave you guys, cough, cough, puff. But before he could finish his sentence, he coughed violently. Then, his expression changed and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The others were shocked. Lin Feng, don't talk anymore. Sob, 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 Dad. Lin Xiaolu couldn't help but cry. Cheng Wangshue's face was also filled with tears, but her expression was fierce. She grabbed Lin Feng's hand and gritted her teeth, saying, I will definitely kill that bastard. He lied to us for so long. He has been deceiving our feelings for the past few years. I want to kill him. I want to kill him. Sister-in-law, calm down. Big brother was angered by him, so he had the opportunity to injure Big brother. You can't let anything happen to him. We are almost in the area of Haiqing base. Soon there will be people coming to support us. As long as Big brother can hold on, when we reach Haiqing base we can save Big brother. Lin Wenwen hugged Cheng Wangshue's shoulder, afraid that she would rush out in agitation. Chapter 131. This is too much. This is too much. How could he? How could he lie to us? What's worse is that he lied to Ah Qiao. Mother Lin, who was in her 50s but still had the charm of a 40-year-old, also had red eyes. Wiping away her tears, she looked at her son with a heartache, and cursed while gritting her teeth in frustration. Lin Wenwen's expression was very calm, but her eyes were somewhat sluggish. She sighed and said, Maybe my sister still doesn't know about this. It's better if she doesn't know. If she knew, I don't know how sad she would be. Yes. Fortunately, Ah Qiao doesn't know. But now Ah Qiao, Mother Lin said, but her throat choked again. I'm fine, don't worry about me. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Lin Feng, who felt much better, moved his throat and said. Just as he finished speaking, Lin Hao, who was standing on the side and paying attention to the movement, suddenly changed his face. He said with vigilance, They're coming. We can't stay here anymore. Let's go. Saying that, he immediately turned around and quickly ran in front of Lin Feng. As soon as he spoke, The others also looked nervous and panicked. Lin Hao ran in front of Lin Feng, squatted down with his back facing Lin Feng. Lin Wenwen and Cheng Wangyue immediately dragged Lin Feng up and put him on Lin Hao's back. Mother Lin immediately picked up Lin Xiaolu and followed them out. The last 5 elite soldiers, holding their guns in advance, carefully went out to scout the situation. After clearing the ordinary zombies outside, they turned around and made a safe hand gesture to Lin Hao, so that they could come out. After they came out, Lin Wenwen and Cheng Wangyue and the others surrounded Lin Hao, who was carrying Lin Feng, and Mother Lin, who was holding the child, in the middle. Then quickly left here. But they didn't go far. Soon they were blocked by a heavily armed military vehicle. The weapons on the vehicle were aimed at them. Lin Hao and the others had to stop. As soon as they saw the vehicle, there was no despair in their eyes, but anger and hatred. The killing intent radiating from Lin Hao, Lin Wenwen and the others became even more intense. Their eyes stared at the vehicle. The expression in their eyes was like they couldn't wait to take a bomb and blow up the vehicle in front of them. Dong! A figure very handsomely landed on the roof of the vehicle. Then he straightened his back and faced them with his hands behind his back. This person was dressed in a well-ironed military uniform with a military sword hanging from the belt around his waist. He wore white gloves on his hands. He was 1.8 meters tall and had slender legs. Her figure was quite good. On his face was a pair of long and narrow eyes with a sharp gaze. His eyebrows were slanted, his nose was high, and his lips were thin. He was a very good-looking man in his 30s. At this moment, he slightly lifted his head off the stage, slightly squinting his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled up in an indecipherable smile. He looked condescendingly at Lin Hao and the others, who were in a very sorry state. Lin Feng, it seems like your situation isn't too good. I wonder how much longer you can hold on? I have medicine here, maybe it can save you. He smiled and looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng lay on his brother's back with his head lowered. He didn't see the other party's face. He just let out a low, cold laugh. There's no need. We will not accept the kindness of a swindler, and we will not accept the hypocrisy of a person who beat me up like this. After Lin Feng finished speaking, Lin Hao stared at him with a gloomy face and said, Yang Jianhua, you know how we've treated you these past few years. Be careful not to invite retribution for what you're doing now. He did not raise his face, but kept it flat and rolled his eyes slightly upward. He stared fiercely at the other party. Standing on the roof of the car, Yang Jianhua lightly smiled and said, Yeah, look at how grateful I am for your kindness. That's why I haven't killed you yet. Otherwise, would you still be alive now? As he spoke, he saw the other cars. They came from all directions, blocking Lin Feng and the others' paths of retreat. Soon, Lin Feng and the others cleared out an empty area without zombies. Yang Jianhua, you liar. You won't live long either. Do you really think that Long Yubai will hand over the Netherworld King's base to you? Don't be silly. Sooner or later, you will reap what you sow. At this time, Lin Wenwen, who still had a calm expression, stared at Yang Jianhua and shouted at him. Yang Jianhua gently looked at Lin Wenwen. The smile on his face was very gentle and infatuated. He said to her, Wenwen, don't be willful. Go back with me. In the future, I will be the leader of the base and you will be my woman. Then won't the base become half of your possession? Why are you so naughty? His expression was very gentle, but the words he spoke were like he was talking to a disobedient pet. While coaxing, he was calling the pet back to his side. Lin Wenwen only felt her hair stand on end after hearing this, and all the hair on her body stood up. She fiercely screamed, and then crazily scolded. Yang Jianhua, don't call me that disgusting. I'm telling you, even if I die, I won't be together with a disgusting bisexual like you. This time Yang Jianhua did not speak again, but the smile on his face disappeared. His expression was calm, but his eyes were staring at Lin Wenwen as if there was something surging. After Lin Wenwen screamed, she seemed to have come back to life. She had broken away from the dull and calm state just now. At this time she was the same as Lin Hao. Her eyes were like a fierce wolf, staring at Yang Jianhua. Her eyes almost popped out, and her puffed-up cheeks showed that she was tightly clenching her teeth. And at this time, Lin Xiao was standing on the roof of the 3-story building beside Lin Hao. She stared at Yang Jianhua, her brain was throbbing with pain. It seemed like something was going to rush out, but it also seemed like it was trapped by something. She looked at Yang Jianhua's handsome and heroic face, and then turned to look at her family. That's right, it was her brother, her mother, and her little brother and sister. Even her niece Xiao Lu was there. They were all her family, that's right. But why did she feel like they were different again? That's right, they had already spent 5 years in the end of the world. Even her little niece, who was only 2 years old, had now grown into a beautiful little girl. This was the difference. Time difference. Seeing her family, Lin Xiao was very excited, and just now she almost showed herself and rushed down. But she still rationally stopped, and only stood on the building closest to them and watched. She first calmed herself down. Otherwise, with her current appearance, even if she didn't scare them, she would still be attacked by them. And she also thought that if she saw her family now, they were the family of the Nether Flame leader that Du Yuanxing and Lin Hao mentioned, then wasn't that Lin Xiao herself? Then why did she become a zombie now? And she didn't have any memories of the past few years after the end of the world? Could it be that she had forgotten? But how could she forget a few years of time? What was going on? Chapter 132. After confirming that it was his family, Lin Xiao felt a little confused again. But she quickly threw these questions to the back of her mind, because the situation below was very tense. And this Yang Jianhua for some reason gave him a headache whenever he saw him. But looking at the way he was coveting her little sister, she knew that he wasn't a good person. He actually dared to lay a hand on her family. Damn it. After slightly adjusting his thoughts, Lin Xiao's aura moved. A sharp killing intent overflowed. Yang Jianhua was expressionless and was about to say something to Lin Wenwen. Suddenly, his eyes flickered and he turned his head. That pair of enchanting eyes with a cold glint shot towards Lin Xiao's position. Lin Xiao dodged subconsciously. When he dodged to the other side, only then did he realize that he didn't actually need to dodge. She was invisible now, so why would she be afraid of being seen by him? He felt that he had made another stupid mistake. No, Yang Jianhua's senses were too sharp. She had only released her killing intent in an instant. He had actually sensed it. It seemed that this man was not simple. Yang Jianhua looked strangely at the roof over there. He inexplicably felt a burst of killing intent coming from there. But apart from the killing intent, he didn't feel anything else. Could it be that his senses were wrong? Yang Jianhua thought it was strange and carefully sensed Lin Xiao's direction. But after sensing nothing, he retracted his attention. He continued to look at Lin Wenwen and the others. His action of turning his head just now also attracted the attention of Lin Hao and the others. But they did not know why he looked up the stairs beside them. Judging from his expression, he seemed to have discovered something. But he couldn't tell what it was. However, Lin Hao and the others did not notice Lin Xiao's direction because their attention was on Yang Jianhua. Yang Jianhua looked at Lin Wenwen and said lightly, "When you refuse a toast, do you want to drink as a forfeit? That's fine, I'll fulfill your wish." With that said, he suddenly raised his hand and waved it in Lin Feng's direction. An ice blade with rising cold air directly condensed in the air. It shot toward Lin Feng and Lin Hao at an extremely fast speed. Seeing that Yang Jianhua hadn't even finished speaking, he had already attacked. Lin Hao subconsciously took a step back with Lin Feng on his back, but Cheng Wangyue suddenly took a step forward. Suddenly, he did a somersault and did a very neat spinning side kick. Pft! Kacha! Yang Jianhua's ice blade was accurately kicked into pieces by her foot, but when she retracted her leg, her posture was a little unnatural. Lin Wenwen immediately supported her. He looked at her feet worriedly and whispered, "Sister-in-law, your feet." Cheng Wangshua's expression was one of forbearance as she frowned slightly. He shook his head at Lin Wenwen but didn't say anything. However, anyone with a discerning eye would know that her foot was injured. Lin Feng raised his head and glanced at his wife. Finally, he raised his head from Lin Hao's shoulder to look at Yang Jianhua. He coldly said, "It's fine if you deceived us, but you killed Ah Qiao. Everyone in the base knows how she treats you. Anyone with a bit of conscience wouldn't treat her like this. Was your conscience eaten by a dog?" The others looked at Yang Jianhua coldly. Yang Jianhua listened to Lin Feng's words and just looked at him calmly. He faintly replied, "Isn't it what she should do to me? Because I saved her life. Isn't that right?" His words made the others feel as if he had saved Lin Xiao's life. It was what he should do in the base for the past few years, because this was his reward for saving Lin Xiao. Lin Wanwen angrily scolded, "Bullshit. If you hadn't cooperated with Long Yubai to harm my sister, how could she have been trapped in the zombie city for half a month without food or water? If it wasn't for your fake news, my sister would have rushed out of the zombie city. It's all because of you. You pretended to go back to save her. You said all this yourself, and now you still have the face to accept everything we did to you. Don't you have any shame?" As she spoke, her little face flushed with extreme anger. Her eyes bulged, her body trembled slightly, and her hands were tightly clenched into fists. Yang Jianhua looked at the angry and agitated Lin Wanwen and suddenly laughed. "Ha ha, yes, I said it. It was all arranged by me. So what? But have you ever thought that if it wasn't for me, Lin Xiao would have died 4 years ago? It was me who let her live a few more years. Originally, we planned to let her join Long Yubai's team and help him build the Earth Dragon base. But that woman didn't want to. Why? If she had listened to me, the current Earth Dragon base would be as big as the current Earth Dragon and Hades bases. She can also be like me now, a vice leader's position. And Long Yubai and I would learn to control the entire base together. Isn't that good?" As Yang Jianhua spoke, his expression became slightly agitated, and he stretched out his hands. His eyes shone as he spoke to Lin Wanwen and the others. "Humph. I didn't expect you to be so ambitious. From that chaotic situation you wanted to build a base and be the leader yourself." Mother Lin had already put away the painful expression on her face and stared at Yang Jianhua coldly. "Fortunately, my sister was wise and didn't build a base with you. Otherwise, you and Long Yubai would have secretly thought of a way to get rid of my family and my sister." Lin Hao also spoke at this time. Yang Jianhua's expression froze and then turned cold. When the others saw his expression, they guessed that Lin Hao's words were right. It turned out that Yang Jianhua had such a plan long ago. But Lin Xiao didn't go with Long Yubai. So he changed his plan and hid beside Lin Xiao. Yang Jianhua, who was right, stared at Lin Hao with a gloomy expression and said, "I've always wondered if you can sense other people's thoughts. It's too dangerous to keep people like you around. If you know all the secrets, then what else can be kept secret?" As he spoke, he flipped his palms that were originally stretched out, and his palms were facing up. He flipped them down and pressed slightly towards the void. Then, a layer of white cold air condensed in the air in front of him. Then, icicles quickly condensed, and the surface of the ice reflected bursts of dazzling sunlight. After a large number of icicles were condensed, Yang Jianhua didn't say anything. He suddenly crossed his hands in the direction of Lin Feng and the others. Then the icicles in front of him turned into a shining white shadow and shot towards Lin Feng and the others. At this time, Lin Feng and the others, except for Lin Feng, who was originally injured, no one else could block these icicles. In addition, these icicles were too fast, and in the blink of an eye, they shot towards them. In addition, the speed of these icicles was too fast. In the blink of an eye, they shot towards them. These icicles were already in front of them. These icicles were already in front of them. Chapter 133. At this moment, Lin Feng, who was lying weakly on Lin Hao's back, suddenly propped himself up. She suddenly propped herself up on Lin Hao's back. He stretched his hands forward, and a raging fire suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The bright red flame formed a semicircle of fire. When the icicles were about to pierce them, it was in front of everyone in time. It also blocked the icicles outside the fire. However, the icicles that were outside the fire did not melt when they came in contact with the fire. Instead, they were nailed to Lin Feng's fire and were trying their best to poke inside. They wanted to poke a hole, drill in, and stab into them. Lin Feng's face did not look good. He gritted his teeth and held on with both hands. Although he knew that he could not hold on for long, he did not want to give up now. Because if he loosened his grip, the people around him would be shot by a large number of icicles. "Step back." He clenched his teeth and forced himself to say 3 words to Lin Hao. Then Lin Hao led the others and slowly retreated. They were retreating, but Lin Feng's fire barrier didn't budge. Instead, it was like he was competing with the icicles trying to rush forward. So the distance between them and the fire was slowly pulled apart. At this moment, Lin Xiao was also very anxious to communicate with Qiu Lili, begging her to help deal with Yang Jianhua. That man was a rank 6 ability user, and he had not just entered rank 6. He was a max level 6 ability user, and was about to break through to rank 7. Lin Xiao stood on the roof and could feel the same sense of crisis from him as Xiao Budian's father. She could not deal with this man now, but she might be able to hold on for about a minute if she fought him alone. But it would be too difficult for her to save Lin Feng and his team from the hands of this man and his armored vehicles. So she wanted to ask Qiu Lili to help. Qiu Lili was a rank 6 king. Against a rank 6 metahuman like Yang Jianhua, it would be impossible. In terms of strength, Yang Jianhua would not be a match for Qiu Lili. But in terms of experience, Yang Jianhua was more cunning. So, the two were probably going to fight. The first time would probably be a draw. Even if Lin Xiao wanted to save people into the space, she could only bring them in one by one. He couldn't take in a large number of people at once. Therefore, she needed time to destroy all the weapons in the vehicles. Only then could they bring Lin Feng and the others away. At this time, Lin Xiao was observing the situation outside the space. She wrote on a piece of paper and showed it to Qiu Lili, who was standing beside her. Those down there are my family, I want to save them. But I'm not a match for that rank 6 metahuman, so you have to go. You have to help me. Otherwise, why would you stay by my side? Qiu Lili didn't want to go out and deal with Yang Jianhua. She hesitated again. She looked around. This was the first time Lin Xiao had brought her into the space. As soon as she came in, she liked the feeling it gave her. Lin Xiao stared at her beautiful red eyes, not knowing if it was because of excitement or anxiety. Her green eyes appeared again, peeking out from behind her sunglasses. Actually, Lin Xiao could see the color of Qiu Lili's eyes because they were filled with energy. Therefore, all Lin Xiao could see was red energy. This was the energy inside Qiu Lili's body. Qiu Lili couldn't see the color of Lin Xiao's eyes, but she could see two pale white eyes in the dark sunglasses. Sensing that Lin Xiao was really anxious, Qiu Lili thought for a moment and nodded. But she gave a cry and said, Oh, I want to stay in here. Then she pointed at her feet and looked at Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao nodded without thinking. Now, as long as she made a move, she could do anything she wanted. Seeing that Qiu Lili agreed, Lin Xiao immediately brought her out of the space. Because she sensed that Lin Feng's situation had changed. Just a second before they left the space, Yang Jianhua suddenly waved his hand. Then she saw Lin Feng's eyes suddenly bulge. He couldn't hold it in anymore and spat out a mouthful of blood. Puffed. The hands that were blocking him loosened and fell in front of Lin Hao. His head tilted and he fainted on Lin Hao's body. Big brother! Lin Hao screamed. And when his hands loosened, the flame in front of them suddenly dissipated. The icicles that were originally blocked outside immediately pierced towards them. Coincidentally, Lin Xiao brought Qiu Lili out of the space. Seeing that Lin Feng spat out blood, the flame barrier was also broken. In a moment of desperation, she dodged. Then she rushed towards them. And at this time, Qiu Lili also dodged and rushed towards Yang Jianhua. Two slender hands waved, and a gust of wind rose from the ground. Then it surrounded the armored car that Yang Jianhua was standing on and began to roll up. Ah! Qiu Lili screamed. Her voice traveled far and wide. It was immediately heard by all the zombies nearby, and their whole bodies stopped. Then they slowly turned their heads to look at Qiu Lili's direction. Then, each of the horrifying zombies had a confused expression on their faces. They lifted their feet and staggered towards Qiu Lili's direction. All the surrounding zombies seemed to be summoned and moved towards that direction at the same time. And when Lin Xiao saw that her family was in danger, she used her fastest speed to rush down without thinking. But her movements were still a bit late and her distance was quite far. Even if her speed was very fast, she couldn't beat Yang Jianhua's icicles. She was less than 10 meters away from Lin Feng and the others. Just as the sharp tip of the icicle was about to hit him, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Lin Wenwen, Chang Wangxue and the 5 soldiers subconsciously blocked in front of Lin Hao, Lin Feng, Mother Lin and Lin Xiaolu. And when Lin Xiao saw that they were about to be injured, her heart became a mess. Just at this moment, a few people suddenly jumped out from the surroundings. and the ground under Lin Feng's feet suddenly shook. Then, a huge hole suddenly appeared in the ground. It seemed to be very deep. Lin Hao and the other 11 people suddenly fell into it. All of them suddenly disappeared. At the same time Mother Lin and Lin Xiaolu screamed. Puff, 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 puff. The sound of ice breaking on the ground was heard. A few figures appeared next to the hole that had suddenly emerged from within a few tenths of a second. At the same time, Yang Jianhua was also shocked by Qiu Lily's sudden scream. When he reacted, he saw a blurry white figure rushing towards him. A strange gust of wind rose around him, swirling around him and the car beneath his feet. Chapter 134. Lin Xiao flashed to the edge of the hole, not knowing what was going on. She almost subconsciously took off her sunglasses, but fortunately, she quickly reacted and stopped her hand that was about to reach for her glasses. She craned her neck to look down. Leader. Deputy Leader Yuan. Du Yuanxing, who was a little behind, looked anxiously at the emotion division and subconsciously called out to Lin Feng. Then he suddenly saw someone standing on the other side of the hole. He immediately called out in surprise. Wen. Long Qingying also called out when she rushed over. Then she looked down. She found that although the hole was about 2 meters deep, the people at the bottom were fine. However, because of the sudden drop, they lost their balance and fell to the ground. It's Tianqing. The people at the bottom also looked up, not knowing what was going on. When Mama Lin saw someone, she cried out in surprise. Qing, it's you. At this time Lin Wenwen also saw Long Qingying. At this time Lin Xiao didn't care so much and jumped down. As soon as she went down, the people at the bottom of the hole immediately stared at her with vigilance. Who are you? Suddenly seeing an unfamiliar sunglasses man jump down, Lin Wenwen and the others immediately stared at her and asked. That who is he? We still don't know your name. Du Yuanxing wanted to come out and help, but he suddenly realized that along the way, this zombie didn't tell them his name. This zombie didn't tell them what his name was. Lin Xiao stood at the side, looking at Lin Feng with some worry. Hearing Du Yuanxing's words, she just casually glanced at him, but she ignored him. At this time Du Yuanxing and Long Qingying both jumped down from the side of the hole, and another man also jumped down. Lin Xiao looked at him. This was a familiar person, and also a familiar person that had changed a lot. It was Yuan Tianqing. She didn't expect him to appear here. The man was 1.9 meters tall, and his body was very straight. He had a strong military aura, and was as strict, powerful and strong as Lin Feng. But his face was somewhat delicate and handsome, and his pair of phoenix eyes were very charming. There was some kind of inexplicable attraction. She had a high nose bridge and thin but beautiful lips. His slightly pointed chin made his face look somewhat delicate. His body was strong and sturdy, especially his long and slender legs. It was even more beautiful than Yang Jianhua's long legs. However, his temperament was very tough, and it suppressed the delicate look on his face. His relationship with Lin Xiao was actually very close. At least before the apocalypse they were all in the same team. They were all comrades. Lin Xiao wanted to walk over to Lin Feng to see if his injuries were serious. But as soon as she moved, Lin Wenwen and the others immediately shouted to stop her. Who are you? Don't come over. They were already in a dangerous situation. Suddenly, a stranger ran out and wanted to get close to them. Lin Wenwen and Lin Hao stared at Lin Xiao. He's not a human. He's not a bad person. No. Who? Don't be nervous, he's here to help you guys. He said he knows you guys. Du Yuanxing looked at the situation and hurriedly said. Lin Xiao saw that her brother and sister were wary and repulsed by her, and her heart felt very uncomfortable. But she knew that now was not the time to talk about this. It seemed that in order to save Lin Feng, she had to first dispel their wariness. She took a step back and observed Lin Feng's situation. She found that the energy in his body was almost depleted, and there was a shadow on his chest. A faint dark color was condensing on his chest. Lin Xiao knew that his lungs in his chest had ruptured and was accumulating blood. Fortunately, he had vomited some just now, so the situation was not that bad. She took out a piece of paper and wrote a few words. I can cure him. Then she threw it towards Lin Wenwen. At this moment, because they were stuck in the pit, Lin Hao no longer carried Lin Feng on his back. Instead, he let him sit on the ground with his back against the cave wall. Mother Lin pulled Lin Xiaolu into her arms to protect her. The others stood in front of Lin Feng. Lin Wenwen did not catch the paper that Lin Xiao threw over, and only looked at her in confusion. Then he looked at the paper that fell to the ground. This person did not speak, but used a pen to write. Regardless of the situation at the bottom of the pit, Yuan Tianxing, who was standing on top of the pit, looked at the situation inside. He found that Lin Xiao really did not have any hostility, and the others were fine. Only then did Yuan Tianxing turn his gaze to the other side, and looked strangely at Yang Jianhua, who was trapped by a strange wind. The strong wind swirled around Yang Jianhua's figure, like a large tornado. The eye of the wind was exactly where Yang Jianhua was, and there was a white shadow hidden in the wind. From time to time it would rush out of the wind wall and attack Yang Jianhua in the middle. The wind was very strong and very thick. The speed of the rotation was very fast, so when Yuan Tianxing looked over, Yang Jianhua's figure was already a little blurry. Yang Jianhua was still the same as before, and his strength was comparable to his. But now that he was suffering from internal injuries, he was not his match in a fight. But that white shadow that even he could not see clearly, Yuan Tianxing felt that it was very strong. It was the kind of energy pressure that only a level 7 arcanist would have. But the feeling that it gave off was slightly different from a level 7 arcanist. But Yuan Tianxing did not know what the difference was. Tianxing, send us up first. At this time Mama Lin suddenly said. Only then did Yuan Tianxing turn around and nodded to Mama Lin. Yes, madam. Pay attention. As he said that, he took a step back and pressed his hands in the direction of the hole. Then he grabbed the air, as if he was holding something. Then he slowly lifted it up. At this time Lin Xiao felt the ground under her feet shake, and then the ground under her feet that had sunk for some reason began to rise. The others seemed to be prepared for Yuan Tianxing's movements and the rising situation under his feet, and calmly waited for it to rise. As Yuan Tianxing's hands rose higher and higher, the ground under Lin Xiao and the others also rose higher and higher. From the moment Lin Xiao and the others suddenly appeared until now, there was no one rushing out of the surrounding cars. There was not even the slightest movement. As soon as Lin Xiao's feet touched the ground, he leapt up. She directly jumped up from below. Her jumping ability made Lin Wenwen and the others look at her in surprise. On the other hand, Du Yuanxing and Long Qingying were calm and did not pay much attention to it. At this time Yang Jianhua was trapped in the wind and had already begun to go crazy. He had already seen what the white shadow in front of him was. It was a girl. And it was a zombie. She didn't look very old, but her attacks were very powerful. Chapter 135. Looking from the outside, Yang Jianhua's body was covered in a layer of ice. From time to time there would be the crisp sound of something hitting the ice. Only Yang Jianhua knew what caused these sounds. It was the wind cones that shot towards him from the thick wind wall. Other people's wind blades were invisible. They could only sense and identify them by listening to the sound of them breaking through the air. And this girl zombie's wind cones were condensed from the wind wall. But he could see them with his eyes. They were small spikes that spun horizontally with small tornadoes. Being hit by this wind cone would not be as simple as a cut. Its rotational force could instantly create a hole in the opponent's body. Yang Jianhua had never seen any wind element psychic that could use wind to attack from this direction. Even Hidden Cloud City's level 7 wind element leader Lu Zhuofeng did not have such a strong concentration of spirit, controlling the large tornado wall, but also splitting some energy to control a large number of small wind cones. No one else could do this. While he was shocked by this girl zombie's strength, Yang Jianhua did not stay idle. He waved his hands inside the ice wall, and ice blades formed outside the ice wall and shot towards the white shadow. However, the girl zombie's body was hidden inside the wind wall, moving erratically. Yang Jianhua's ice blades could not hit the target at all. They were all shooting randomly, and many of them were blocked by the opponent's wind cones. After Lin Xiao jumped up, he stood on the other side and watched Chou Lily and Yang Jianhua's battle. He found that Yang Jianhua was completely suppressed by Chou Lily. Unless he gathered energy and released a big move, it would be difficult to break the situation in front of him. After sending everyone up, Yuan Tianqing turned his head to look at Lin Qiao again. Then he shifted his gaze to Yang Jianhua's battle. Sure enough, Yang Jianhua quickly began to release his big move. A white light suddenly rose from his ice wall. A very strong energy gathered inside the ice wall. There was a faint premonition that it was going to explode. Qiu Lily, who was originally floating inside the wind wall, suddenly flashed out of the wind wall. She directly appeared outside and stood on top of a tree that was not very tall. Qiu Lily lightly stood on top of the tree, like an ancient martial arts master. He didn't know how she did it. Her eyes were fixed on Yang Jianhua, and her red eyes with dark circles were filled with the desire to win. His hand stretched out in Yang Jianhua's direction, and his fingers opened up to grab at the air. Following Qiu Lily's movements, the tornado surrounding Yang Jianhua began to shrink slowly. Poof! Kacha! As the tornado shrank, the edge of the car under Yang Jianhua's feet was slowly peeled off by the wind. While Qiu Lily's wind was shrinking, Yang Jianhua's ice barrier was slowly expanding outwards. Soon, a layer of ice armor formed on the entire vehicle, blocking the abrasion of the whirlwind. Suddenly, Yang Jianhua's ice shield, which was so white that his body couldn't be seen, suddenly expanded. Poof! It suddenly exploded. It directly blew up Qiu Lily's tornado. Pitter-patter. A large number of ice shards flew out and scattered on the ground. This sound attracted everyone's attention. That's a zombie. He could actually fight Yang Jianhua to a draw. Could it be the Zombie King? At this time, Mother Lin suddenly stared at Qiu Lily and said with a shocked expression. Mother Lin might be the oldest here, but she was an ordinary person without any abilities. However, her knowledge and eyesight were very sharp. Her words had voiced out the doubts in everyone's hearts. Moreover, he gave a confirmation message. Lin Hao, Lin Wenwen and the others were also looking at Qiu Lily in surprise. The people here had only ever heard of a level 6 zombie king, but no one had ever seen one. However, Madame Lin was certain that Qiu Lily was at the 6th level, and everyone could see it. Qiu Lily was very powerful. Mom, are you sure it's the Zombie King? Lin Hao squatted down and supported the unconscious Lin Feng. He looked at his mother and asked with uncertainty. Your sister once said that the eyes of a king have color. That's because the energy is leaking from the eyes, and it can't be concealed, which is why it changes color. Mother Lin continued to stare at Qiu Lily and nodded in reply. Really? So that's what a zombie king looks like? Other than the eyes, it looks like a normal person? Cheng Wangxue also said at this time. It seemed that the pain in her foot had subsided. To be able to suppress Yang Jianhua's level 6 ice ability from the start, it seems that this is indeed a zombie king. At this time, Yuan Tianqing also spoke. He had been observing the situation over there, and now that he saw Qiu Lily's face, he also agreed with Mother Lin's words. When they heard that Qiu Lily was a zombie king, Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying at the side were also very shocked at this time. They looked at each other with a dumbfounded expression. Du Yuanqing couldn't hold back and couldn't help but say, She's a zombie king? They thought about how they had been sitting in the same car with a level 6 zombie for the past 2 days. The two of them didn't know why, but their bodies suddenly felt cold. When Qiu Lily saw that Yang Jianhua broke her wind wall, she suddenly felt a surge of anger in her heart. She pouted and stared at Yang Jianhua with a very unhappy face. Unhappy? This person was clearly weaker than her. It was actually able to destroy her great tornado. The very unhappy Qiu Lily stood at a high place and suddenly extended her hands towards Yang Jianhua. Then she waved her hands. A large number of small wind cones appeared in front of her, and then quickly shot towards Yang Jianhua's direction. Yang Jianhua had originally condensed the ice shield, but at this time he saw that Qiu Lily at this time had already exploded. At this time he immediately raised his hands, once again condensed into an ice mirror. The entire surface of the mirror blocked the direction of Qiu Lily. PFF. The small wind cones rapidly spun and pierced into Yang Jianhua's ice mirror. At this time, Mother Lin suddenly said strangely, Hey, this zombie king's eyes are red. Then her ability should be of the fire attribute, right? It seems that only fire energy is red. But now she is using wind ability to attack. Could it be? She suddenly thought of something and frowned in thought. At this time, Lin Qiao suddenly quietly hit her figure. While everyone was paying attention to Cho Lily, the level 6 zombie king, she silently moved to Lin Feng's side. Without anyone noticing, he placed his hand on Lin Feng's body. She knew that Lin Feng's current situation was very dangerous. She couldn't delay any longer. She needed to quickly repair the wound in his chest. However, if her mother and siblings were to hand the heavily injured Lin Feng over to her in her current state, it would be too late. That was definitely impossible. But to dispel their wariness and doubts, it would take time. Lin Xiao didn't want to wait that long. The longer it took, the more dangerous Lin Feng's situation would be. Chapter 136. Therefore, Lin Xiao, who had always adhered to the principle of taking action first and then reporting in times of danger, was now in danger. She immediately decided to steal Lin Feng away, while no one was paying attention to her. If you have anything to say, come out and explain after saving the person. Thus, she immediately went into stealth mode. At this time, Cho Lily was also starting to get angry, because a large number of her small wind cones struck Yang Jianhua's ice mirror. Although they could drill many holes, Yang Jianhua quickly condensed them again. That was why he couldn't break his ice mirror no matter what. But it couldn't be helped. If one were to compare the various types of abilities, the formless wind element was no match for the ice element, which could condense solid objects. So now Cho Lily was gradually unable to suppress Yang Jianhua. As for Yang Jianhua, from this short exchange of blows that lasted less than a minute, he had already figured out Cho Lily's current strength. At the very least, her wind element attacks were not much of a threat to him. Moreover, he could also see that Cho Lily did not have any strategy in her battle. She used her ultimate move the moment she attacked. Moreover, he only attacked and did not defend. His combat techniques were very crude and immature. At this moment, Yang Jianhua was holding the ice mirror with one hand and waving the other strangely. A large number of icicles, and ice blades appeared in front of the ice mirror. Then he continued to shoot at Cho Lily. Therefore, the people standing on the ground saw Yang Jianhua, who was standing on the roof of the car, and the zombie king on the top of the tree, and they began to compete with each other. Cho Lily saw Yang Jianhua using the ice mirror as a shield to block her attack. At the same time, he condensed a large number of sharp ice weapons and threw them in his direction. Even though his wind all had blocked most of the icicles, there were still some that he couldn't block and shot towards him. She quickly retracted one of her hands and twisted it. At the same time, a tornado rose from the ground. She was surrounded in the inner circle from bottom to top. It happened to block many of the ice blades that she failed to block and continued to fly towards her. Yang Jianhua's eyes dimmed slightly when he saw her use a defensive technique. His hand suddenly moved. Then above Cho Lily's head, where there was no wind, he stealthily formed many ice blades and pointed them at Cho Lily's head. Look, Yang Jianhua is about to launch another sneak attack. Cheng Wuxia and the others watched the battle with wide eyes. Perhaps it was because of the strange mentality of, the enemy of our enemy is our friend. Their hearts couldn't help but lean towards Cho Lily. At least, although Cho Lily was a zombie, she did not hurt them. However, Yang Jianhua was a human. Yet he lied to them, hunted them down and killed their loved ones. Therefore, they had unwittingly placed themselves on the same side as Cho Lily. At this time, Lin Xiao had already reached Lin Feng's side. She stretched out her hand and pressed on Lin Feng's shoulder. Then, she looked up at the few people beside her. Then it suddenly appeared from the space, but in the next second, it disappeared along with Lin Feng. Huh? Big brother. Where's Big Brother? Lin Hao, who was supporting him, was the first to react when Lin Feng disappeared. But he didn't know what was going on. He only felt the hand that was supporting Lin Feng become lighter. Then he disappeared. He disappeared. Lin Hao was immediately startled, and suddenly shouted out. Once he shouted, the others immediately turned around. They saw that the place where Lin Feng was leaning on Lin Hao was now empty. There was nothing there. Only Lin Hao's arm was still supporting him, and he had a dumbfounded expression. Brother! Where did brother go? Lin Wenwen's expression changed, and he shouted in shock. Mother Lin, Cheng Wuxia and Lin Xiaolu looked around in panic, but they didn't see anything. Lin Feng? Lin Feng? Dad! Boo-hoo! Boo-hoo, where's Dad? Where's the man with the sunglasses just now? Why did he disappear? At this time, among the 5 remaining soldiers, the squad leader, who was a man in his 20s, suddenly pointed at the place where Lin Chao was standing and said. Everyone immediately looked, but in the end they saw nothing. Yuan Tianqing's expression turned cold, and his eyes turned cold. He originally thought that this person was an ally, and wouldn't harm the people on their side. He didn't expect that this person had hidden so deeply. He immediately looked at Du Yuanqing and asked coldly, "Do you know something? Was it you who said that he wanted to save Lin Feng? What's going on?" Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying were much calmer than them. Du Yuanqing waved his hand. Under the stern gaze of their deputy leader, he quickly replied, "That, he really isn't disgusting. Don't worry." He knew about Lin Chao's space, and now that the zombie and Lin Feng were gone, the zombie must have secretly brought them into the space while everyone wasn't paying attention. Although he didn't know what method he was going to use to heal the leader's injury, because Du Yuanqing also didn't know that Lin Chao's lake water had such a strange ability. At this time, Long Qingying suddenly saw the piece of paper that Lin Chao had thrown at them by Lin Wenwen's feet, so she walked over and bent down to pick it up. "Don't be anxious. Wenwen, look." She opened the paper and said to everyone. Then she handed the paper to Lin Wenwen. She continued, "It might have a way to save the leader, while the leader's condition isn't too bad. The sooner we deal with it, the sooner we can be at ease." "Let's be clear, where did he take Lin Feng?" Yuan Tianqing said. Taking him away without saying a word would, of course, scare everyone. Long Qingying glanced at Du Yuanqing, indicating for him to speak. Du Yuanqing looked at everyone, and saw that everyone was staring at him nervously and fiercely. That expression, it was as if they would pounce on him and tear him apart if he didn't give a reasonable reason. "Coffin," Du Yuanqing said with some pressure. "He has a space, and now he's probably taken the leader into it. According to our interactions these few days, we all feel that he won't harm the leader. Let's wait first, as long as his companion is still here. We don't have to worry about him leaving with the leader." When talking about companions, Du Yuanqing pointed to Chou Lily, who was fighting Yang Jianhua. But when he said that, everyone's expression changed. They immediately turned to look at Chou Lily in disbelief, then immediately turned back to look at Du Yuanqing. "What did you say? You're saying that this zombie king was brought by the sunglasses guy? Isn't he human? How could he be with this zombie?" Lin Hao said with his eyes wide open. "He's not human." At this time, Long Qingying said faintly. Her words immediately made everyone's pupils shrink, and they all stopped talking. For a moment they began to doubt their own ears. Chapter 137. He's not human, then he's... Mother Lin's voice trembled as she looked at Chou Lily, and then at Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying, but she didn't want to say it out loud. It was as if it wasn't true. If what Long Qingying and Du Yuanqing said was true, then the sunglasses guy wasn't human. If he was the same as this level 6 zombie girl, then wouldn't he be a zombie too? Long Qingying looked at Mama Lin, then nodded without hesitation. "That's right, he's a zombie. He's just a strange zombie. It's over. Did he capture Lin Feng and eat him? If he's a zombie, then how could he save humans?" Mother Lin's eyes dimmed as she muttered to herself in despair. Cheng Wangshua's legs went soft. Her already injured legs couldn't support her anymore. She almost fell to the ground. Luckily, Lin Wenwen caught her in time. "Sister-in-law." Lin Wenwen, who was shocked by Cheng Wangshua, immediately woke up. He turned around and stared at Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying. He suddenly scolded, "Long Qingying, did you bring them here to harm us? He's a zombie, how could he save my brother?" Long Qingying's expression didn't change at all. She just calmly shook her head. "Well, when I'm not wrong. Trust me, just wait a little longer, he'll bring the captain out." Seeing Lin Wenwen and the other scary expressions, Du Yuanqing took 2 steps to the side and said carefully, that's right. Since he's taken them, we can only wait. Otherwise, we won't be able to do anything now." "You." Lin Hao stood up abruptly. He raised his hand to attack Du Yuanqing, but was quickly blocked by Mother Lin, who was next to him. "All right, Lil Hao. Don't attack. Let's believe their words for the time being. If Lin Feng doesn't come out, we'll have to kill him. If we don't wait for Lin Feng to come out, then we'll attack them. At this moment, Yuan Tianqing was also staring at the two of them, his sharp eyes almost poking holes in them. Yuanqing whispered, he really isn't a bad zombie. He's good. He had saved us several times before. And look, he can write. He's different from the other zombies. As he spoke, he pointed at the crumpled piece of paper in Lin Wenwen's hand. Yuanqing cursed in his heart. Fuck you, dead zombie. He actually dared to have an affair in front of everyone. How are we supposed to explain this? Up until now, Lin Wenwen had not even seen what Lin Xiao had written on the paper. Hearing Yuanqing's words, she pushed Chang Wangxue in front of Lin Hao in motion for him to support her. He opened Lin Xiao's paper and saw 5 words written on it. I can cure him. On the other side, Qiu Lily had been competing with Yang Jianhua in terms of moves. After Yang Jianhua created a dozen or so ice blades above her head, Yang Jianhua's eyes lit up. He abruptly increased the number of ice spikes and other weapons in front of him, and their shapes were 2 to 3 times larger than the previous ones. Then, he swung them towards Qiu Lily in a densely packed manner. The increased size of the icicles and ice blades naturally increased in weight as well. Then Yang Jianhua swung them towards Qiu Lily even faster. The combination of speed and weight immediately destroyed Qiu Lily's wind all forest into pieces. Qiu Lily hurriedly controlled the rotation speed of the wind wall to block Yang Jianhua's attack. Then she did not notice the dozens of finger-thick, but extremely hard and sharp ice blades above her head. Suddenly they fell down from above, fiercely stabbing towards Qiu Lily's head. Qiu Lily's hand suddenly stopped, then she immediately looked up. More than a dozen ice blades flashing with cold light were stabbing toward his head at an extremely fast speed. She didn't expect that Yang Jianhua had already formed an ice blade above her head without her noticing. He actually wanted to plot against her when she didn't know. Seeing the ice blades about to shoot down, it was too late for Qiu Lily to raise her hand to block them. She suddenly opened her mouth wide and let out a fierce scream. Ah, kacha kacha kacha. And after Qiu Lily screamed, the others only felt their heads shake, and for a moment they all lost consciousness. They fell into a momentary blankness. And the ice blades below Qiu Lily's head suddenly broke into pieces, falling all over her head and face. After closing her mouth, Qiu Lily's expression changed. It became somewhat ferocious, and her eyes overflowed with intense red light. Her mouth also began to crack, revealing her white teeth. This time she was really angry. Qiu Lily was angry, the king zombie was angry. It was very terrifying. Roar roar roar, roar roar roar, roar roar roar. Woo woo woo. Suddenly there was a wave of horrible and unpleasant sounds of zombies. Then a large number of ordinary zombies from the corner of the road, the corner of the street, the corner of the wall, the corner of the house, and so on emerged. They began to swarm towards those few cars, scratching and scratching. They were like ants squeezing to the side of the car. They did not care about being stabbed to death by the extension frame outside the car, and directly stepped on the corpses in front of them to climb up. The chariots immediately began to sway from side to side. At this time, Qiu Lily's eyes emitted a red light, and her hands opened her claws. Her whole body suddenly overflowed with a burst of halo, and soon the ice on her head, hair, and face suddenly evaporated. It was as if it was evaporated by the high temperature. She stretched out her hands towards Yang Jianhua, and was ready to move her body to directly pounce on him. Suddenly she stopped, turned her head towards Lin Hao and the others, and screamed again. Ah! The zombies who were originally surrounding them and preparing to pounce on them all stopped their movements at the same time. Then, as if reluctant to leave, she stared at them a few more times, then slowly and reluctantly turned around, moving towards those cars. At this time, Yang Jianhua quickly woke up from the impact of Qiu Lily's scream. He looked at the large number of zombies that suddenly appeared around them. He suddenly raised his hand high, and made a gesture towards the sky. Then he saw those few armed cars that had not moved finally moved. All the weapons in the cars began to aim at those zombies, and then a series of machine gun sounds rang out. Tu-tu-tu-tu-tu. Bang 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 bang. On the other side, Lin Xiao suddenly brought Lin Feng into the space. She also did not have the mind to care about what was happening outside. She saw that the shadow in Lin Feng's chest was getting bigger and bigger, and quickly put him on a sofa. After helping him to lie down, she turned around and took a cup of water from the table, and immediately ran to the lake. Then she fetched a cup of water from the lake, and returned to the bed. Then she slowly fed Lin Feng to drink. Lin Feng was already unconscious, but his teeth were tightly clenched. Lin Xiao could only use one hand to forcefully open his teeth, and slowly poured the water into his mouth. Fortunately, he was lying flat, and Lin Xiao slightly lifted his face up. The water quickly flowed down his throat. Chapter 138. On the other side, Junjun walked out of the small space with the little boy. She sensed Lin Xiao's presence and came out to see what she was up to. She watched curiously as Lin Xiao tormented Lin Feng. Even though she knew that this was the person Lin Xiao was looking for. She knew that Lin Feng was the person Lin Xiao was looking for. But she didn't know the relationship between Lin Feng and Lin Xiao. Fortunately, she came back halfway. No wonder she came all the way from City B to the south. Although she didn't arrive at the southern base, she came back halfway. If she had been late, this man might have been in big trouble. Lin Xiao poured a glass of water into Lin Feng's mouth. She had already taken off her sunglasses. She looked at the shadow in Lin Feng's chest with her naked eyes and saw that it was slowly spreading. It wasn't until Lin Xiao poured him a cup of lake water that he found that the spreading of the shadows had stopped. Junjun stood beside Lin Xiao with the little boy in her arms. After smelling Lin Feng's scent, she took a deep breath. However, she didn't have a big appetite for human flesh anymore. She turned her head to look at the lake in Lin Xiao's space, although it looked like a lake. It looked like a lake, but she didn't know where the water came from, or where it was going. After staying in Lin Xiao's space for so long, she felt that the lake wasn't as simple as it looked. The most obvious thing was that every time she wanted to eat her son, she would run to drink from the lake when she couldn't control her willpower. Every time she finished drinking, she would feel much more clear-headed. She also ate Lin Xiao's snake meat. She was really hungry, although she didn't have to eat her son. But every time she passed by the buckets of snake meat, she would smell that smell. Therefore, it was boring to stay in the space. When she was cooking snake soup for the little boy, she would force herself to eat some raw snake meat. She had also tasted the cooked snake meat. It tasted worse than raw. After she had tasted how unpalatable the cooked snake meat was, she didn't have much aversion to raw snake meat. Therefore, when she was free, she would go to get some snake meat to eat. She was also amazed by the freshness of the lake water in the space. She didn't know if it was because she had been soaked in the lake for a long time, but she gradually felt that the raw snake meat wasn't that bad anymore. Lin Xiao heaved a sigh of relief after the shadow in Lin Feng's chest stopped spreading. But after waiting for a few minutes, he did not see the shadows shrink or disperse. She thought for a moment, then poured a glass of water into Lin Feng's mouth. Junjun also knew that the lake water had a healing effect on people, because the little boy's body had improved a lot with the lake water these days. He had already put on some weight. She could feel that her son's vitality and spirit were slowly increasing. Now that he saw Lin Xiao using the lake water to heal Lin Feng, he didn't know what was going on with Lin Feng. Only Lin Xiao's eyes could see it clearly after she poured the second cup of water. Only then did the shadow on Lin Feng's chest change. It started to disappear bit by bit. It turned out that there wasn't enough water. When Lin Xiao saw the shadow disappear, he immediately discovered the problem. If there wasn't enough water, then the energy in the water wouldn't be enough. Thinking of this, she immediately turned around to get a third glass of water. She poured it into Lin Feng's mouth again. After giving him 3 full cups of water, Lin Xiao saw the speed at which the shadows were disappearing. Then she also saw that the light green energy had been coiled up in Lin Feng's chest. Outside, the people who were dizzy from Cho Lily's scream slowly woke up after a while. But Yuan Tianqing's face turned pale, and a trace of blood suddenly flowed out of the corner of his mouth. He suddenly covered his chest, feeling that his internal organs had been shaken to the point that his blood was boiling. But soon he didn't have time to worry about his own situation. Seeing that a large number of zombies had suddenly appeared around them, Yuan Tianqing covered his chest. He stretched out a hand, pressed it forward and then raised it up. Along with his movement, he saw that the ground around Lin Hao and the others suddenly rose slowly from the ground. They were all surrounded in the middle to protect them. Yuan Tianqing supported himself with one hand on the rising wall and leaned against it with his back, gasping for breath. But soon he found something strange, because the surrounding zombies seemed to turn a blind eye to them, completely ignoring them. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they charged towards the cars that Yang Jianhua brought. Huh. Yuan Tianqing looked at those zombies with a confused face. What the hell? Are they going to ignore a fragrant living person like me? Then he saw Qiu Lily pounce towards Yang Jianhua with a ferocious face, and her tin claws were burning with purplish-red flames. On the other side, Qiu Lily was ambushed by Yang Jianhua. Although she didn't get hit, this kind of sneak attack made her very angry. She almost had her hair cut off by this good-looking man. Of course she was angry, seeing Qiu Lily pounce towards him at an extremely fast speed. In just a flash, she appeared in front of him in an instant. Yang Jianhua quickly raised the ice mirror to block her. Qiu Lily didn't care about the ice mirror in front of her, and the red light in her eyes intensified. When she flashed in front of the ice mirror, she suddenly raised her claws and waved her arm. She directly grabbed towards Yang Jianhua's ice mirror. Gotcha! Bang! Her flaming claws scratched the ice mirror. The ice mirror that was previously hard and indestructible instantly cracked at the position where she grabbed it. Then the crack quickly made a loud noise and exploded into pieces. Yang Jianhua was shocked by the explosion of the ice mirror and felt the exploded ice shard spraying towards his face. He subconsciously turned his face to avoid it and raised his arm to cover his face. At the same time, he leaped backwards, intending to dodge Qiu Lily's follow-up attack. But at this time, Qiu Lily was already in front of him. How could he dodge it so easily? The other claw swung towards Yang Jianhua's face, leaving a trail of flames behind it. Poochie! Fortunately, Yang Jianhua condensed an ice shield in time to block Qiu Lily's claw when he retreated. But it was quickly crushed by Qiu Lily. Yang Jianhua took this opportunity to quickly turn around and dodge. He leaped backwards and escaped. Quickly retreat. When he left, he even shouted loudly. Then he stepped on many zombie heads and fled to the side where there was cover. Want to escape? Humph! After Qiu Lily's attack missed, she saw that Yang Jianhua was ready to escape so quickly. She immediately snorted in her heart, and her figure flashed. She also followed his direction and chased out. After receiving Yang Jianhua's order to retreat, the people in the cars were all ready to drive away. As soon as the car moved, the zombies that were crawling all over the car were pushed out, and then they fell one after another. Chapter 139. Their car was very sturdy, so no matter how these ordinary zombies climbed up and scratched, it was useless. They couldn't do any damage to the car at all. Therefore, the soldiers in the car drove away very calmly. Only a large number of zombies were left behind, all chasing after their car. After a few minutes, Yang Jianhua, Qiu Lily, the zombies, and the soldiers that Yang Jianhua brought but didn't show up for some reason, all gradually left. Yuan Tianqing leaned against the mud wall, watching the situation unfold, and he didn't understand. That was it? Yang Jianhua, that treacherous villain, came aggressively and said that he would do anything. But in the end, he was beaten away by a strange king-level zombie. Yang Jianhua probably didn't expect this situation, right? Yuan Tianqing was originally prepared to endure the injury and fight with Yang Jianhua. But in the end, these two zombies came out of nowhere, and one of them took Lin Feng away. The other one beat Yang Jianhua away, and seemed to be chasing after him. They wouldn't stop until Yang Jianhua was injured. What's with this wall? Tianqing? Is Brother Tianqing outside? Before Yuan Tianqing could come back to his senses, Lin Wenwen's voice came from the wall behind him. Yuan Tianqing came back to his senses and looked at the large number of scary and disgusting ordinary zombies around him, but now they had retreated in Yang Jianhua's direction, and there was a safe zone without zombies on his side. But the stench of those zombies still lingered in the air. What happened just now? Mother Lin's voice also came. Yuan Tianqing supported himself against the wall at this time, and raised his hand to wipe off the blood at the corner of his mouth. Then he reached out to lower the mud wall, and let everyone out. What happened? Why are we surrounded? Right, why did my mind go blank just now? Lin Hao asked blankly, but when he looked up, he suddenly saw a lot of zombie corpses on the ground. There were dark red bloodstains on the bodies of the zombies everywhere. Looking further, he could see the backs of many zombies dozens of meters away. What's going on? Why are there so many zombies and why are they all heading that way? Lin Wenwen saw that there was clearly a group of living people here, but they didn't seem to care at all as they chased in that direction. Look, Yang Jianhua's men and car have left, Long Qingying suddenly said. Yang Jianhua and the zombie are gone. Long Qingying, are you sure the bespectacled zombie is still here? Lin Hao quickly looked around. He suddenly looked at Long Qingying and asked sternly. When they realized that Yang Jianhua and Qiu Lily were gone, they immediately forgot that their minds had been blank for more than 10 seconds. He didn't care why Yuan Tianqing wanted to surround them. Long Qingying and Du Yuanqing looked at each other. Not sure either. This was because the zombie had already disappeared with Lin Feng for a while, but it still hadn't appeared. The zombie girl also left. Lin Feng. Don't tell me Lin Feng was eaten, Mrs. Lin said with a frightened expression. As soon as she said that, everyone stared at Du Yuanqing and Long Qingying. Long Qingying said, actually when they appeared the day before yesterday, they were looking for news about you guys in the south. They just happened to meet us and saved us a few times. We didn't tell them about you guys but she still knew. In the end, when we were surrounded by Huo Wu, she still saved us. Hearing Long Qingying say this, Du Yuanqing nodded repeatedly and said, yes, he said he wanted to help you guys at first. We didn't believe him at the time so we didn't say much. But then we saw that they were coming here to find you guys. We weren't killed by Huo Wu, so he would continue to attack us. So we left that place and followed him to find you guys. Lin Hao snorted coldly, you guys are really brave, daring to travel with 2 zombies that could kill you in a minute. But it's been so long my brother and that zombie still haven't appeared. What do you say? Du Yuanqing said weakly, we didn't know that the little girl was the zombie king. If they knew they wouldn't have dared to follow them so easily. Du Yuanqing thought they were level 4 or 5 mutated zombies at the time. After all, being able to write and communicate with people meant that they weren't ordinary zombies. But along the way, the only one they talked with was the zombie that took his glasses. The female zombie in the white dress basically didn't even look at them. Other than in the car, she also stayed far away from them. You guys don't even know who he is? Lin Wenwen stared at them. Lin Wenwen and the others weren't familiar with Du Yuanqing, but they were level 5 psychics in the base. They all knew about him but they didn't talk much. On the other hand, Lin Feng and Du Yuanqing had exchanged a few words. And Long Qingying only met Lin Wenwen after the base was built. The reason they knew each other was very simple. Lin Wenwen had helped Long Qingying once when they were hunting zombies, so the two of them got closer. So there was a reason why Lin Qiao didn't know Long Qingying. Long Qingying said lightly, that's not important. What's important is that he didn't do anything bad to us. And he even saved us. Actually, speaking of this, she felt that it was very strange in her heart. In the post-apocalyptic world, humans might not necessarily save other humans. Everyone was having a hard time protecting themselves, why would they care about others? But she had been saved by a zombie a few times. Although she suspected that the zombie had ulterior motives at first, he had already saved her, so she could only accept it for now. At least on the surface. But along the way, she still kept her guard up against these 2 zombies. Even if she didn't accept it, what else could she do? And their original goal was to find Lin Feng. She also wanted to find Lin Feng. Then let's just travel together. Even if he saved you a few times, he must have ulterior motives. And they are zombies, why would he save you? There must be a motive. Lin Hao said at this time. They looked at Long Qingying and Lin Feng very sternly, although they really wanted to believe the 2 of them. But that was a zombie that only knew how to eat people and gnaw on people's brains. How could he save people? What's more, he was a zombie, what could he use to treat Lin Feng's internal injuries? Yuan Tianqing looked at them quietly. It wasn't that he didn't want to speak, but he couldn't hold on any longer. Qiu Lily's scream just now had made his internal injuries that hadn't gotten better worse. He was also on the verge of a mental breakdown. But he knew that he couldn't let himself collapse, so he could only force himself to hold on. Chapter 140. Du Yuanqing said anxiously, it's true. That male zombie is a space type. He has a lot of space, we've been in there before. Long Qingying nodded in agreement. I've been in there too. It's huge. Mother Lin said. If he wants to save Lin Feng, why would he take him away secretly? Do you know if he really wants to save Lin Feng or not? If he wants to save someone, he should at least do it in front of us, not hide it from us. Who knows what he wants to do? Du Yuanqing was speechless. Mother Lin was right. He didn't know what to say and looked at Long Qingying for help. Long Qingying thought about it and said, maybe he's afraid that you won't believe him and delay the rescue. I see that Lin Feng's condition isn't good. The earlier we deal with it, the higher the chance of him being cured. At this point there was no point in panicking. They could only wait with a glimmer of hope. Although they couldn't believe Long Qingying and Du Yuanqing's words, they still hoped that they were telling the truth. They hoped that the zombie was really here to help them and cure Lin Feng. Then it would bring Lin Feng back to them. But their rationality reminded them. That was impossible. Why would an unfamiliar zombie come to save them? What was its intention? Maybe eating them was just a small thing. It was to get Lin Feng's level 6 energy core. Just as everyone was waiting with despair mixed with hope, two figures flashed behind Lin Wenwen, Lin Hao and the others. He appeared at the spot where Lin Feng had been lying. When they were talking to Du Yuanqing and Lin Hao, they took a few steps forward. Therefore, when Lin Xiao and Lin Feng came out from their original position, they ran behind them. Lin Xiao supported Lin Feng, who was still unconscious. In the blink of an eye, they saw a group of people's backs and butts. When she saw Lin Hao's back, she wanted to kick his butt out of habit. But because she had to support Lin Feng, she could only squat on the ground. She couldn't kick him anymore. Lin Xiao's feet were itching, and he stared at his younger brothers but unwillingly before shifting his gaze. However, when she turned around, she saw that Yuan Tianqing was staring at her intently. But he didn't say anything to warn the others. Lin Xiao glanced at him and found that his face was also very pale. The condition of his chest was similar to Lin Feng's, but there were still some shadows in other parts of his body. Dark shadows gathered on his shoulders, waist, abdomen, legs, and so on. This guy was already injured to this extent, but he was still forcefully standing. Sure enough, his personality hadn't changed. He loved to show off and was used to enduring. He wouldn't allow himself to give up until the very last moment. Lin Xiao was not wearing her glasses. Her dark eyes shone with a cold light. She casually sized up Yuan Tianqing before shifting her gaze away. He looked at Lin Xiaolu, who was leaning against Mama Lin and revealing a little of her body. Lin Xiao moved his body and stretched out his hand to poke Lin Xiaolu's back. Lin Xiaolu looked back blankly, and then her eyes widened. He shouted, "Daddy!" She stared at Lin Xiao and Lin Feng as she yelled at them. At the same time, she tugged at Mama Lin's arm. "Yes, Dad is behind us." When the others heard her shout, they immediately looked at her and then immediately turned around to look. When they turned around, they saw the man just now supporting Lin Feng, who was lying on the ground. He had a pair of dark eyes that only zombies would have, and he was quietly looking at them. Everyone was shocked and subconsciously took 2 steps back. In the post-apocalyptic world, anyone would be shocked if a zombie suddenly appeared behind them. Lin Feng. But after seeing Lin Feng, Cheng Wangshue immediately didn't care about her leg injury or zombies. With a slight twist of his body, he pounced toward Lin Feng. Lin Xiao saw her pounce over anxiously and didn't move. He just squatted there and let her pounce in front of Lin Feng. The others hesitated for a few seconds. After seeing that Lin Xiao really didn't have any hostility, they immediately surrounded them. "Big brother! Big brother? Big brother, how is he?" Lin Hao immediately turned around and came over. Lin Xiao saw him coming over, so she pushed Lin Feng to them and stood up to take a step back. Seeing that Lin Xiao really brought Lin Feng out and that he was fine without any other injuries, everyone stared at him in disbelief while checking if there was anything wrong with Lin Feng's body. Lin Hao squatted on the ground and supported Lin Feng. He used his hand to gently press on Lin Feng's chest. After carefully sensing it, he slightly widened his eyes. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Then, he raised his head and looked at Lin Xiao, who retreated to the side. "Big brother, he wasn't sure, but he had to speak." But before he could finish his sentence, the 3 women had already rushed to ask him questions. "How is Lin Feng? How is Big Brother's body? Is he all right? How's Lin Feng's injury? Lin Hao retracted his hand from Lin Feng's chest, then opened Lin Feng's eyelids and squeezed his wrist. Then he continued, he's fine. His condition is much better than before. It's just that his energy is depleted and his body is too weak. But his vitality and spirit are very strong, so he will probably wake up soon. Big brother. Big brother. At the end of his sentence, he tentatively called out to Lin Feng. After Lin Xiao stood up, she didn't see Qiu Lily and Yang Jianhua. When she was treating Lin Feng's injury in the space, she didn't notice what was going on outside. When she was almost done, she closed her eyes to sense what was going on outside. She found that Mother Lin and the others were very anxious, and they were about to bite Long Qingying and Du Yuanxing. Then she hurriedly brought them out. There was a large amount of zombie smell in the air. She didn't need to smell to know that a large number of ordinary zombies had just appeared. It was probably Qiu Lily who summoned them. But where did she run off to? Did she go after Yang Jianhua? She raised her nose and sniffed, then took out her sunglasses and put them on. She found that Qiu Lily's smell was indeed following Yang Jianhua's smell. Thinking of Yang Jianhua's face, Lin Xiao's head began to ache again. She closed her eyes and raised her hand to rub her temple. She wanted to rub away the throbbing pain in her head, but it didn't work. Lin Xiao sighed and could only open her eyes to look at Yuan Tianxing. Right now, she could only divert attention from Yang Jianhua. Yuan Tianxing's condition seemed to be more serious than Lin Feng's, but because the energy in his body hadn't been depleted too much, that was why he was holding on. Maybe she should give him a glass of water to drink. Of course, it must be lake water.